I felt like I was in school again, preparing the slide because like I already knew what I wanted to say, but like how do I edit this in a format that isn't going to take a whole lot of time? But anyway, but that's just me. That's my preamble. So today I'm going to be talking about the book Otaku, Japan's Database Animals by Hiroki Azuma, and how it changed my life. Well, it changed my approaches to like how I understand, how I read, how I participate in pop culture. So next slide, please. So some background, or in other words, why did I choose this book? So this book was originally like published in English in 2009. And I tried reading this book when I was in my teenage years because I, surprise, was really into anime. I know it's shocking, I know. But also that title alone, right? Otaku, Japan's database animals. It's just something about that is just immediately attention grabbing. But I mean, it could be a little pretentious, right? Especially considering that this is like, what is this? Postmodern literary theory? What?
And it is,
yeah.
What? If you explain, like, what's the relationship between database and animals here?
Oh, we're going to get into that.
Okay,
we're going to get into that. We're going to break up the title because that's probably the most of what I'm going to be talking about. What is a database animal?
Perfect.
What does it tell us about, so let's see. Yeah, so I didn't really understand what a database animal was, what the book was trying to say at the time, but it did raise sort of questions for me to ask myself and, about what my relationship was with like pop culture media, how fandom as like writ large, how people within fandom interact with each other, how they relate to, both on the small scale and both on the larger scale. Like why are consumption habits the way they are, right? Why do these patterns sort of emerge over time? And then now I'm a VTuber, so it feels like talking about this book feels like I'm naturally closing the circle on that, right? It feels like I'm closing the loop. All right, Next slide, please. Okay, but that's enough yapping. What is this book about? I mean, obviously, it's about otaku, who are Japan's database animals. We can end the presentation here. Thank you for having me. I'm but a kid. The book itself is about sort of the evolution of geek culture or otaku culture during the transition from modernism, which was like post-war Japan, or post-war America, really, post-World War II, to postmodernism, which is like today. Sort of how consumption habits, how pop culture itself changed in terms of what was being made and how that mirrored sort of the development of capitalism within those sort of decades. Most importantly, I guess that the thrust of, we're going to touch on what the title is in a bit, but basically he talks about, a lot of the book is devoted to the transition from narrative consumption to database consumption, which we're going to discuss a little bit in a few minutes. But it also tries to ask about how did it change, what precipitated these changes, what can that tell us about how we talk about art and culture today. But I'm sure you're asking this, I'm asking this. Next slide, please. What is a database animal anyway? Let's try to answer that question. All right. Next slide. But let's start by going a bit simpler. Something that probably a lot of you already kind of know. What is an otaku, right? The book defines it as like a general term referring to those who indulge in forms of subculture, strongly linked to anime, video games, computers, science fiction, special effects films, anime figurines, and so on. In other words, probably the people watching this right now, considering.
So I do want to kind of ask a slight question here, because I read a fair amount of manga. And one of those things that they often don't translate is otaku. But the connotation from context that I'm getting in those translated mangas is that a kind of intrinsic part of somebody being an otaku is not the content itself, but more importantly, that they're cringe as hell about it.
Yeah, it's like, I know that, in the early Pokemon games, you get like that trainer type, the Pokemaniac, or some people that are enthusiastic, right? It's like a form of geekdom that's enthusiastic, right? Extremely like unabashedly participating in this sort of subculture. Right?
Yeah. That like somebody could be an otaku about something that has nothing to do with anime or video games, but if they're like hyper enthusiastic and proselatory and kind of annoying about it, then you can call them like a sports otaku. A baseball
like a
otaku.
Sports otaku. Yeah, somebody that's really into sabermetrics.
Yeah. Like a sabermetrics guy would be a baseball otaku. Yeah.
Right, right? Like you have military otaku, that sort of thing. Gun otaku, like.
God, I'm sure that both of us know so many of those people.
It's like, but in this case, I want to make the distinction that in English, right, in the West more broadly, in sort of the Anglosphere or Europe, Eurosphere or whatever, the West more broadly.
Yeah.
Otaku, when people say otaku, it usually refers to people that are nerds about Japanese pop culture specifically. But that's not really the case, right? When used in the original Japanese, because you can be an otaku about like South Park and Powerpuff an American or kaigai anime as they call it, right?
Yeah, and I mean it makes perfect sense, right? That like when we talk about a person being an otaku in America, it's part of that is the focus on this foreign cultural element.
Of course.
And we even have different terms for things that like we wouldn't call a there's a type of guy that we would call a wereaboo. We would not call them a Nazi otaku.
Right.
That was the first one that came to mind. I'm sorry, that's probably not the best one, but like somebody who's really into French culture, we might call like a really annoying Francophile. We wouldn't call them a France otaku or a Paris otaku.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah.
Exactly. Right. So it's like similar to how they, anime and manga are used in Japanese as just like general descriptors for animation and comic books. But it's kind of the same. So the book doesn't make this sort of, even though the book talks about the historical development of otaku and how it was shaped by like, American influence following World War II within Japan specifically, the thing does not actually make a distinction between otaku culture and the properties within otaku culture being like specifically Japanese. So I'm not going to make that distinction here. Right?
Oh, that actually does get to an underlying question here. I noticed that there was not a translator.
Oh, there is a translator listed. It is Jonathan Abel and Shion Kono, I think.
Okay, so this was written in Japanese. That was my question.
It was originally written in Japanese, that was translated in 2009. So it was written in 2002, published in English 2009.
Okay. So this is in no small part otaku being used in a Japanese sense for a Japanese audience, and the fact that we as Westerners have a slightly different concept of it is a Oz problem. It's not it's not a problem for the text. It's just a piece of interpretation that we need to keep in mind.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
And it's like, I don't think the book really talks about, like, the book talks about, like, the history of how Japanese otaku in the 60s, 70s, and so on advanced and all that within Japan, but I don't think, the culture is specifically, the book does not, I don't think Azuma makes that sort of distinction, as strict a distinction. He's more so interested in like examining it within that historical context, but he doesn't restrict it to that context.
Roger. Okay, yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Let's to the next slide. So let's talk about grand narratives. And in order to talk about grand narratives or meta narratives, we got to talk about this guy's ideas. This guy named Jean-Francois Lyotard, who is a French literary theorist who conceived of this concept of a grand narrative as being sort of the defining feature of modernist philosophy, modernist narrativism, right? The idea that you have a large totalizing narrative that emerges when you analyze lots of different smaller narratives or sub-narratives, right?
Mm-hmm.
The final grand narrative at the core of it being some form of political ideology,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like an example of this would be, how I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is my observation as I go in, but like how Americans tend to talk about sort of the figures at the beginning of the formation of the United States sort of forms the basis for a broader cultural mythology about the American way of life.
Yes, right? Yes. This is one of those ones. I mean, this gets into like a kind of complicated one because liberalism is actually, I think, a little bit too broad. I think it includes a totalizing narrative, but that totalizing narrative, I would say, is the Whig history. The Whig history is a totalizing narrative about the course of history, the course of ethics, the structure of the world. But I think liberalism is actually larger than that and can survive the death of Whig history. But I'm sure that you're going to talk about what the distinction between modernism and postmodernism is.
Yeah, eventually, in terms of the relationship to this idea of a thing that unites and explains everything.
Yeah. Right. Are you going to talk about it in contrast to pre-modern?
In terms of pre-modern, no, because I think because this is like specifically we want to talk about this transition from meta-narrative to. But if you want to talk about,
I'll talk about it very briefly, just to make sure, because sometimes people get a little bit confused with the way that those of us who are more academically trained use the word modern, because people kind of think modern means like the last 20 years, because that's kind of how we use it colloquially, right? That's how we use it like in daily life, is like modern means like my lifetime. Whoever my is, like whatever your lifetime is whatever modern is. And the way that historians in particular tend to use it is the modern era begins around 1500. And if you study history on like a longer arc, it feels very obvious to you that there's something very different. The 1500s have something in common with the 1800s that neither of them has in common with the 14 or 1300s. It's definitely a thing. And this concept of this grand totalizing narrative that Lyotard is talking about being like a modernist way of thinking, the contrast point with pre-modern thought is not that pre-moderns didn't have grand narratives, but that the totality of them was so complete that they're not really conscious of the fact that they're constructing grand narratives.
Right. It's
just kind of assumed that you have this total concept of how the world works, whether that's the Catholic Church or the ulama for people in the Middle East or something else. Like, you tend to not be as conscious of the fact that you are building a narrative that is trying to make sense of a set of historical ideas. You just kind of have this received wisdom about the basic nature of the world that you take for granted. And that's kind of the difference between a modernist and a pre-modernist way of looking at this.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to make that brief note, yeah.
No worries. Yeah. I mean, like, I will say that he defines it in the sense, within the context of postmodernism, which is today's era. So, but he describes this concept as, like Almantas said, right? It's a very modernist way of thinking. It's not a very modern way of thinking. There is a difference.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the next slide, please. We will talk about, so now so he uses this idea, right? Azuma cites an author named Eiji Otsuka who uses the concept of the grand narrative or meta-narrative to explain sort of narrative consumption in the post-war era, right? In this case, so his quote here is, "What is being consumed is not the individual drama or goods, but rather the entire system hidden behind them. However, the system, or grand narrative, itself cannot be sold. So in appearance, installments of these serialized dramas and goods get consumed as single fragments that are cross-sections of the system." This is something that Azuma calls sort of a tree-based structure, a tree-based model of narrative consumption. And when I see tree here, right, I mean to say that, similar to like an actual tree or like a tree in the context of computer science, but like a tree, clearly the branches are subservient to like the trunk, and each of those branches out. So there is sort of a hierarchical relationship between between all of the different narratives, and then how all of these narratives relate to the grand narrative. There's a hierarchical relationship between the system's constituent parts, right? And overall, where consumers are consuming like this broad worldview or this broad history, this fictional history, through the consumption of these smaller narratives. One example that he provides is, for example, would the universal century continuity of Mobile Suit Gundam.
Okay. Rough continuity to deal with for sure. But yeah, keep going.
Right? That's the idea being that all of the different anime series like existed as part of this history, right? It's like, oh, when does this movie takes place? Oh, it takes place sometime after the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Char's Counterattack takes place so and so after. Zeta Gundam, Double ZZ Gundam all fit into this timeline. You have all the supplementary material, so people kind of get invested in the lore between, Xeon and Earth and all of that, right? So that's what they're consuming, and that was sort of the focus point of narrative consumption in the post-war era. And then we see here there's a little diagram that he shows that demonstrates sort of the modern world image. Next slide, please.
I was actually going to ask, to kind of extend this metaphor. Just like to kind of extend this metaphor, the way this metaphor kind of reads to me is, I eat an apple. Right. And that apple is the very external product of a tree.
Right.
But in no small part, what I am consuming is the micronutrients that come from the soil. And the tree has to exist in order for me to consume those micronutrients. I can't just eat the dirt.
Yes.
And get my magnesium and stuff like that. I need to eat the apple.
You need to go through the apple, yeah.
Okay. That's what I was kind of like.
And more importantly, it's like, I guess you could also say you're participating in, like, you wouldn't be able to eat the apple if the apple wasn't part of like a whole tradition whereby apples are produced.
Yes. I can't just have an apple. I need to have an apple orchard.
Right, exactly, right? It's like it's all this, again, we get into like the idea of this grand totalizing big thing behind the scenes.
I think this is a compelling metaphor. I just wanted to like really take a brief note to say I really like this metaphor. I am into this metaphor.
Right?
Yeah, I'm fond of saying that I get really mad when people say X thing isn't that deep, because I think it's actually the other way around. I think it's actually hard to not make deep things. I think that the nature of depth is that it's underneath everything, and that you accidentally hit it all the time.
Exactly, right?
All right.
But is that what consumers want? This question we will ask ourselves on the next slide, I think. So Almantas has had me talk about things before, and we're bringing him up again. We're banging Frederick Jameson drum again. Frederick Jameson is another literary critic who describes one of the defining features of today's postmodern age as a crisis of historicity, a loss of an overarching context. I think what you said earlier kind of like echoes that a little bit, right? It's like, oh, it doesn't have to be that deep, right? People don't want, or like people are missing that context, right? So people have we've sort of lost that ability to perceive the depth in that way, or to conceive of things in that sort of sense, right? So with sort of the because the early otaku, right, this was when capitalism was beginning to intensify, and when sort of the crisis in historicity that Jameson was talking about sort of begins to hit. But the post-war otaku are still educated and still trained to kind of think in the old modernist way. They're still trained to consume in the old modernist way. So, but now there is no longer an overall grand narrative to to really cling to, or people were beginning to be a lot more cynical about the notion of grand narratives to begin with. So because the otaku of this era kind of exists in this sort of awkward contradiction where their thinking is still very modernist, or their way of view, they still view the world in this modernist way, while the modernist world is dying, they instead choose to seek out these fictional meta narratives they project. And that's why, hence the whole getting really invested in Mobile Suit Gundam, getting really invested in Legend of the Galactic Heroes and the worlds and all that. That's why there's no shortage of like books describing, oh, this is the total capacity of the VF-25 unit in Macross or whatever.
Yeah.
You have all these books, these settings.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I'm just like something just like hitting me in like a really funny way of thinking about somebody using Legend of Galactic Heroes as like a way to avoid grand narrative.
It's like you want a grand narrative, but you don't have the grand narrative, so you cling to Legend of Galactic Heroes instead to replace. It's like that meme where it's like, I wish today's world would collapse, so my totalizing ideology will be the one to rise from the ashes.
Yeah. That's the classic meme about the accelerationist. Yeah, that's the meme, right? That's the meme. Okay, so I'm interested. I do have my own questions here, but I'll hold them.
Okay. So basically, the thing is, these otaku, like, more as sort of the cultural logic of postmodernism takes even more hold. What happens when you have a new breed that isn't as married to the idea of a grand narrative? So going back to Lyotard, he actually defines postmodernism as an incredulity toward meta-narratives. People no longer want them. People were very cynical about them. And so it was with the third generation of otaku in the 1990s. With this new generation no longer interested in this sort of grand or meta-narrative, instead, Azuma noticed a shift toward where they were instead consuming not based on their enjoyment of this rich history, but rather based on feelings of empathy that they felt towards fragments of these narrative products, without particular interest in like the whole, like the work as like a totalizing whole, right? And some of you might wonder, it's like, feelings of empathy, it sounds like I'm dancing around something. No, the guy Azuma defines it as moe. This is moe. This is where moe kicks into high gear.
Right? I'll come back to this one because this slide is striking. This slide's remarkable. Right. But I also this is where I think some of my my particular predilections as I've gotten older kind of run into like a little bit of contrarianism here, because I don't have I both don't think this is as new as Lyotard is portraying it, and I certainly don't think it's as negative. Because I can always kind of hear this little thing underneath it of the sort of like, this is a problem because it means that people aren't reading books because they have the political message that I want to teach them, is what I always kind of hear underneath that. And I think that was always kind of an insane thing to ask of people, that like people would choose their fiction based on it being didactic. That always felt insane to me, partially because I'm a nonfiction guy first and foremost, and I'm like, if you want to have like a thing that's didactic and teaches you things, that's what nonfiction's for. Like, what are you doing in the fiction aisle? Like, what are you doing here?
I actually don't think. My argument is that I don't think he actually views this as like being a negative thing.
Okay. Because I can kind of like, maybe I've just been trained too much by being on like the wrong parts of Twitter.
I'm like, Jameson is the one who is like critical of it.
Yeah, Jameson is who I'm thinking about in here, to be clear. I'm not thinking about Azuma as much.
Lyotard is like, as we lose sort of, as ways of understanding and viewing the world sort of lose purchase in the minds of everyday people, we need to evolve these systems to kind of figure out what happens after, right?
And I will, this is one of those things that I always feel like I need to like explain again and again and again and again, because like there's a pop cultural, pop historical explanation of postmodernism that I think leads people astray. Right. When you see somebody on the news talking about like, oh, these postmoderns are trying to destroy reality, that's not remotely what is going on. When we're talking about even like Derrida or Foucault, like really traditional postmodern writers, they are, I think it's fair to say they're largely being descriptive. That they are noticing something about the world around them where people it's not them who are being suspicious of modernist literary theory, of modernist politics. It's that everyone in the wake of World War II looks at what the Whig historical model looked like, which included stuff like eugenics. It was not necessarily a nice system. Like scientific racism was baked into that, and they see that it led to World War II, and that's kind of where postmodernism really comes in, is like looking at all these systems and going, maybe no. And what are the implications of like once you give up on trusting the totalizing system of the entire global elite for the last 200 years? And we're still recovering from that. And there's an argument to be made that I read recently, actually, that totalizing systems are very useful for making cognitively approaching the world simple and easy, but the wider the amount of data you have to take in, the more inappropriate having a totalizing worldview becomes. Like a totalizing worldview cannot really survive contact with meeting people from other countries on a regular basis. Or just the way that science works in the 21st century. Like it just cannot survive in that circumstance. It's no longer useful. It is useful for simplifying a world where you don't have to confront nearly as much new information. And so that's part of the reason why I want to clarify. Like postmodernism isn't a top-down project being imposed on us by philosophy professors. It's just it's something that people were doing because they got so burnt out by connecting the dots between their education system and the Holocaust. And also hello mix. Yes, that is correct. People use postmodern the way they use irony, where they're using it with such imprecision that it makes it hard to talk about the literary theory behind it.
It's true. I mean, it doesn't help that postmodernism is also characterized by pastiche and irony.
And it does not help at all. That as much as I talked about how I think Butler's a very unclear writer, but like Derrida is a famously unclear writer, and I think it's earned.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's actually that complicated. I think he just wrote like a jackass.
It's like, look, if the day I figure out how to explain what a rhizome is, what a body without organs is, I'm going to be able to. I'm going to take my Pulitzer and retire. But
they did make a Pokemon fan fiction about that, by the way.
Oh god. Whoa. Funny you mentioned fan fiction, right? It's funny you mentioned fan fiction because that's a fun segue.
This is what we're looking at here. We're looking at fanfic tags, several of which I like.
Exactly. So it's important to note, right? It's important to note that like fragments towards a narrative product, a lot of the descriptions, a lot of the examples that Azuma provides in the book are like to do with characters or the overall like setting. Like people consume things based on, oh, this is a sci-fi thing. I like sci-fi, therefore I will consume this thing. Not because I'm interested in the sort of overall galactic war for 10,000 years that it's selling. It's because I like space. I like the thing when the bullets go pew pew. But it gives examples like how, like for example, you can see that I have like a bunch of safe Buru tags here in the back. It's based on like moe characteristics, because we talked about the feelings of empathy being moe, but I guess in English you could say I kin this. This is my blorbo. Am I using these words right? Someone in chat who's younger.
Yeah, somebody in chat who's younger. I mean, You should probably know, Lux, that the person who most recently chatted, Mix. Mix was one of the founders of TV tropes.
Okay. All right.
Extremely expert in this lingo.
Okay,
in the lingo.
Right. People who aren't interested in the actual narrative. It's funny that you mention it because I call this phenomenon the TV troopsification of literacy.
I am also going to just really make it clear here that you have created an incredibly funny juxtaposition by talking about this chart as having moe characteristics.
Yes.
And as you're saying that, I'm just burning a hole looking at the anal sex and ABO tags.
Okay, so in fairness, I took that one from a journal. I took this from a journal, from a scientific journal. It's academic. I couldn't find a better chart. This was the chart.
I'm just enjoying the juxtaposition of referring to ABO as a moe thing. That's the part.
So I stuck that here. I stuck that here because I wanted to demonstrate that moe characteristics. You think of them as aesthetic, right? It's like, oh, I like tsundere characters. I like the tsundere characters with the twin tails and the high socks. Or oh, I like it when they have the short hair and they have white hair and they're aloof and cold. But then the protagonist warms them up. It's like, wait, hold on. Like, you could apply this to like tags. You could apply this to tropes. So, fluff, angst, hurt, comfort. These are aesthetic signifiers that exist within this sort of broad continuum of pop culture.
So if you're not,
in other words, the grand non-narrative.
If it's not coming up within the next slide, we'll put this in the parking lot. But I actually think that these are very good examples of what I talk about when I say that it's hard to not be deep.
Yes.
That, you know, this is actually something that me and Darius talked about briefly on Twitter earlier today, that like the yandere character, the yandere thing, it's not actually shallow. It's not just an aesthetic signifier. It is a way...
I saw that. You said it's like the primal need to be loved, right?
Yeah, to me, like, not just to be loved, but the fantasy of being loved without responsibility. Like, you don't owe anything to the person who loves you and that you love. That they are doing that, like and Darius put it as unconditional. That it is to be free from the work involved in love, which I think is very overlapping. But like, it's, you know, I think that is like, yandere is not just an aesthetic. It might be an aesthetic signifier, but to reduce it to just its surface level aesthetics is to miss the forest for the trees.
Of course, right? But of course, what I meant when I say this, I don't mean to imply that these things are like simply aesthetic signifiers. Rather, they are being commodified and consumed as aesthetic signifiers without real consideration made towards what this implies or what this could represent in us, right? So, and of course, going back to the TV tropes or AO3 example, these fragments, importantly, are interchangeable and recur across different works, right?
Of course.
It's all things being consumed as simulacra or as fragments, right? But let's go to the next slide. This is a simple one because I want to talk about the database part now. But what is a database? For those who aren't, I didn't know how technical I wanted to be because I thought, oh, this is just something people can take for granted. But then I realized, no, can't. I'm just too online. But a database, basically, it's a centralized set of records stored and retrieved to be referenced from various places. ISBN numbers, social security numbers, Dewey Decimal System numbers. These are all examples of databases. But the important takeaway here is that it can be reused in different places, right? Like you have, different libraries all have the same ISBN code for the same book to refer to the same book. Each different ISBN does not have a hierarchical relationship with the other things that exist in the same database. Though obviously with some databases, it's a bit more nuanced than that. But generally, if a book exists in a database, it is an entry. It exists on the same as every other entry, is the thing. Okay. Next slide.
Yes.
Unless you have a question.
Oh, no. I was stopping myself from explaining more about how databases work. I'm like, that's actually not going to clarify anything. The important part is that it's you have multiple different tables, and like if you know that something is X, you also know that it's Y because it refers to other elements, other parts of the database, other tables on the database, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to get into the technical details of it, even if they might be clarifying.
Or the important thing is like each table, each entry in a table is the same as every other entry in a table.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't matter. Yeah, there's no this one is more important and loops into these ones on the same table. Doesn't
the shape of anything in the same table is the same. The content is different, but the shape is the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So now we get into what sort of his idea of database consumption and the concept of the grand non-narrative. So now that consumer behavior, because now consumer goods are being produced in so much abundance and people want to consume the fragments, they want elements, they want cute characters, they want comfy, they want hurtfic, they want cafe AU or whatever. There are now all of these fragments, these archetypes, if you want to call them that. They exist on this continuum, this grand non-narrative that are referenced endlessly, rearranged, and mixes and matches in a way like a database, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see we have a little diagram here where small narratives are ultimately just combinations of these fragments, or it's like people consume their idea, this idea that this specific combination of aesthetic signifiers or fragments, narrative fragments, which exist within the continuum of pop culture, right? Like it wouldn't, tsundere doesn't really mean anything outside the context of otaku culture, but it is something that exists within it, and people consume something based on that. Small narratives are created heavily referencing this broader continuum of otaku culture. Setting and character elements are rearranged fragments. That's not to say that there isn't any new innovation, right? Though obviously, like everything is just everything new. Nothing new is created under the sun and all that. But there is innovation. But any sort of novelty is also capable of being subsumed into the database, right? It's like, oh, I invented this new character or whatever that people latch onto, and then other works like how Rei from Evangelion, which is the example that he provides.
I mean, there's no way we're not going to talk about Evangelion while talking about this. Like, there's no way we're going to avoid that.
Of course, right? But there were so many of that kudere kind of character that came out after the fact, right? The other thing he points out is the fact that Evangelion exists to service this new third age of otaku, this new breed, because now it has alternate continuities within itself. Right? With how, we're going to do another movie, we're going to release it as an omnibus with the original stuff. So people can kind of latch on to these specific elements that you can take in isolation out of the rest of the narrative, and you can... Right? That's, of course, not... Which in turn services sort of the culture of derivative creation, which is what Azuma calls it, like the creative handworks, right? This also falls into that as well, because now it's just parts of the narrative that are remixed and rearranged and consumed independently. Right? That is what that is. Yeah, she's not, as Mick says, she's not the first example, that's true, but she definitely had an influence and made it as popular as it is.
Well, and forgive me again if this is something you're going to bring up soon.
Go ahead.
But I'm kind of hit by, we're talking about like doing combinatorial remixing of themes and portrayals and ideas, and the one that actually hits me first, even more than anime, is thinking about Renaissance painting and sculpture. Right. And so if you draw a pieta, if you make a pieta, which is there's a famous sculpture and painting of, it's a pose. Pieta is a pose where Mary is like the dying Jesus is in Mary's lap. Like Jesus is like Jesus' corpse on Mary's lap while Mary is looking down lovingly, beneficently on the dead shattered body of Jesus coming off of the cross. It's the second most famous portrayal of Jesus after on the cross. Or actually even on the cross, but you replace Jesus and Mary with like political figures you like.
Mm-hmm.
Or you replace Jesus on the cross. There's a very straightforward one because people still do that one all the time. You know, they put Donald Trump on the cross. They put Barack Obama on the cross. They put whoever on the cross, whoever they think was right, and they put them on the cross to indicate that like they were correct and they were unfairly persecuted for their correct beliefs. But we got hit by ads. We actually got hit by ads now. So my tradition, Lux, is to use the ad break to stretch so that my folks who do not have subscriptions do not get screwed out of content. So I am going to put us on the fan art gallery. Okay. So we'll take a breather for about 2 minutes. All right. I'll see you all. Anybody who see you all in a few minutes.
Okay.
And we're back. We
are indeed back.
Yeah, we got hit with those ads a little bit surprisingly. Normally the ad bot tells me with a 5-minute warning, not a 35-minute warning. So normally that would give me a chance to be like, try to find a nice break for talking about this. But you said you had a good segue.
Right. So one of the examples, one of the, I guess the one that the author really stresses is, I don't know, I don't expect people in your chat or even you to really know this character, but the anime Digicarrot.
Okay, I don't.
Okay, so that's the prime example of this sort of postmodern moe thing that the author really, really emphasizes, because the character of Dejiko, let me add a slide to show her, right? Because she in particular, I guess, is of particular fascination of to the author, because she does not, when she originally appeared for the first time, okay, I guess I should have the next slide be just the character so people know what I'm talking about.
Hold on, we're on the Kojev slide.
Yeah. Oh, now we're on the Kojev slide. Oh, okay.
Hold on. Did you delete the slide that you're thinking of? Because it goes from databases to Kojev.
Oh no, I added a slide.
Oh, and you didn't get it. Oh, okay. So do I need to reload it then?
You might need to reload it. That's
okay.
Fine.
Apologies, chat. We need to reload because I see it right there.
Okay.
So view slideshow. Yes. This is the character in question.
This is the character in question. Yes, indeed. So the thing is, she demonstrates a lot of like the characteristics that we associate with moe culture. You've got the cat ears, you got the maid outfit, you got the big eyes, the green hair, the little hair accessories, the little spindly bits coming out of her hair. The key thing here is that when the character first appeared, she existed as a mascot for an otaku goods store.
Okay. Yeah.
But people were so taken with her entire look that they began to make merchandise, they made manga, they made an anime of this character who is just a mascot representing the store gamers, right? Okay. And you can kind of see similar examples with, like, you know, I guess the Vocaloids, who are just anthropomorphizations of vocal synthesis software that now have media properties and all that associated with them because of this
coming hot on the heels of the Brazilian Miku trend.
Oh yeah. Exactly, right? Which lends itself to this idea, this culture of, you know, people create derivative works endlessly. I guess this is something that seems to be, I guess, Japan specific, because normally releasing fan work and selling fan work in the West is not usually looked upon kindly. But
it has gone really, really well for E.L. James.
That is true, but on
the extraordinary generosity of Stephanie Meyer, that one has gone very well. Other than that, like, yeah, you're right. Like, as much as the Orville is a Star Trek fan work, it does not just literally have Vulcans, right? Exactly. It does actually still like use new terms and use new characters and stuff like that, even if it's thematically. Yeah.
Right. Like, but the creation of fan work, this thing is a core part of fandom. That, you know, different cultures look upon it differently, but remixing and editing different aesthetic parts of different works has always like been a part of fandom, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The persistence of the IP gray market in Japan, or I should say the differences between IP gray markets of like what is the allowable IP gray market of the US versus Japan is a striking cultural difference, right? Like, you know, Nintendo just like killing you with hammers if you try to do a simple let's play of one of their games.
But this isn't. That's a different book that we can talk about.
That's a different. But it is worth saying, like this sort of thing where people just like make commercial fan works, and just like get away with it, easily and readily in Japan is definitely a cultural difference, because getting away with that in the US is the exception, not the rule.
And that's how so many different creators come to prominence, right? Like Clamp, the people behind Cardcaptor Sakura, among other works. I'm sure there are others, but Cardcaptor Sakura is my favorite. Got their start by doing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fanfic, fan comics. They made ones where one of them lays an egg or something, and then they became one of the most successful artist collectives of the 20th and 21st centuries.
You've triggered Mix with that one.
Yeah. See, no. Mix knows what I'm talking about. Mix knows what I'm talking about. Mix, I know. But that is the striking difference, right? Where here, you find out that an author used to do sexy art. What? No, impossible. But it's like, how dare they transition to making things for all ages? But there, it's it's part of the.
It is worth saying that it was less common even 2 generations ago, but it is quite common nowadays for modern Western literary authors to start as fanfic authors. They just never try to commercialize,
of course,
the fanfic, with again the noteworthy exception of E.L. James, who put in a lot of work to erase the evidence that to a lot of work that I don't think was very effective to erase the evidence that she was writing that 50 Shades was a Twilight fanfic. But it did start as a Twilight fanfic, and now there's a kind of weird, robust industry of particularly Reylo fanfic getting published, but that involves twisting and stretching the concept of Reylo to the extent where Reylo is just any time a person who is traumatized falls in love, which feels a little bit broad to me. It does feel kind of broad to me, but and as Mix points out, that can lead to bad habits. As an editor, particularly a nonfiction editor, I have my thoughts on what the telltale bad signs of fan fiction are, and they are probably different than what Mix thinks they are. But we're not here for talking about editing. We are here for talking about moe.
Moe, true.
Are we ready for the big drop?
I did want to actually talk about now that you mentioned E.L. James is the big one, but I know I say in Japan, so it's not a Western thing. The other big thing that I remember in recent memory is that one person who wrote Love Live fanfic, and then it turned into an award-winning sci-fi novel. First and Last Idol, I think it's called.
Okay.
I haven't read it, but there are people out there doing so that. It is that sort of self-referential, derivative-focused thing is a part of fandom and geek culture and all that. But,
yeah. And this showcases why I am so ill-suited. Whenever I enter fandom spaces, I'm always kind of I always feel like I'm not in the right place, even if it's fan fiction and fandom for stuff that I like, not universally, but often. The Katawa Shoujo fandom I found very familiar. They made sense to me. But I look at what's a property that makes sense to write a lot of fan fiction in, and I think it's always ones where the underlying premise has far-reaching implications for how a person would live in that world.
Right.
So Love Live doesn't make sense to me, but One Punch Man, living in the One Punch Man universe sounds insane. And I know that that's a lot of what one writes about in the extended works of it is what are the other major characters of One Punch Man doing and what are they like? But I think that that's a compelling thing to study, and that's not really what people tend to write their big fan fictions about. I don't think that power scaling, for example, is at all compelling. I can't imagine. I'm so baffled when people do power scaling stuff. I have no idea what they're talking about.
Oh yeah, no. It's people want that. People want that.
People want that. And I don't know why they want it. That's the thing. I don't know why they want that.
The people want to know if the main guy from Tsukihime can kill the servants from Fate Stay Night, it is written.
I've got a question in my I've got a question in my big Q&A list. That's who would win between Gandalf and Piccolo, and it's a funny question, but I don't
win at what? I guess
I don't. Like,
in like a 1v1 brawl.
I think that's the question. But like my mind is just kind of going like. I kind of think like that was Nando. Okay. I kind of think that like to me, I'm like, well, who's the more interesting character? Which hot take I think is actually Piccolo. Like, I do actually think Piccolo's kind of a more interesting character because he has an arc, whereas Gandalf is a narrative device for pushing the plot.
Don't you see, Gandalf's arc is that he dies, but then he comes back, but better, and then he solves everything. He goes from not being able to solve everything to being able to solve everything. I'm being facetious.
Yeah. Piccolo's got a weird arc. Piccolo's got a weird arc, but it's I don't. Where it's like again like this is what Mix has said like Legend of Galactic Heroes has a arc where you can really ask yourself like what happens after that war. One of my favorite TTRPG is about that question. Well, my second favorite TTRPG. My second favorite TTRPG is basically a Redwall fanfic.
Which one is it?
Wanderhome.
Wanderhome, okay.
Wanderhome. This is such a digression, but Wanderhome is what if all the wars in Redwall ended? What if everybody what if they made a lasting peace in the Redwall universe? And one of the ways that this plays out that's very interesting is that the only combat mechanic in the game is that one character, the veteran, has a move where he can attack another person.
Right. He
can draw his sword and kill whoever is standing in front of him instantly. And if he does so, they become an NPC.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, you have to hand the character sheet over to the GM, which is fascinating, right? Because like it's a really good example of how in a game, once you make a rule for something that seems assumed, it no longer becomes assumed. You know, like if you make a potion of walking on floors, all of a sudden you start asking questions about like, why would you need this? Can you not normally walk on floors? But in this question of like this implies that normally you cannot be violent, and it's a radical subversion of what Redwall is about, which is about eternal race war.
I mean, you're not wrong, but this is the first time I think I've ever heard Redwall being described as what if it's about an eternal race war.
It is. Like,
I mean, it is, but I don't think I've ever heard it being put that way.
And I think Legend of Galactic Heroes has a similar thing, where Legend of Galactic Heroes is about this ultimate contest between Republican and monarchical government. And it ends with a conclusion, and that implies that there is some sort of compelling story about life both before and after.
Exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. Like there's a potentially compelling fanfic in like a Republican political activist trying to survive after Legend of Galactic Heroes.
But I guess that's where you get the sort of divide, right, between audiences who I don't want to think about what happens after in the context of this complicated history. I want to see what would happen if Yang Wen-li and Lowengram were waiters and baristas at a cafe and kissed.
I was really expecting to say if Yang Wen-li railed.
I mean, I wasn't going to say that. You need the preamble first, otherwise, how am I going to believe it?
Yeah, and I mean, this is why Mix makes the good point of fanfic attracts fanfic writers, which sounds tautological but isn't, and I think he's correct on that one. Like this is why I don't tend to read very much of it. I've read some fanfics that I've really liked. Most of them have been in Katawa shoujo, and I can talk about them at some point, but that's not really the point here. We were about to take a radical turn to talking. It's actually very nice that I brought up Legend of Galactic Heroes. We've been talking about Legend of Galactic Heroes because I know what the next slide is.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yeah, we are ready. Let's go.
We are ready.
Yeah, okay, so we use this Kojev. So it's like, what do we mean when we say animal? We've spent the last bit talking about databases and otaku, but not so much the last part of that title. I mean, we didn't define what Japan was either, but we're not going to get into it. That's too much. So, what do we mean by animal, right? So Azuma points to the writings of Alexandre Kojev, who is, again, another French theorist in postmodernism. Again, there's a theme here. Who defined what it means to be human, or sort of the human condition, by its inherent opposition to what he calls an animalistic state. And this is his interpretation of Hegel. This is from, I think it's Introduction to the Reading of Hegel. Like this is his interpretation of Hegel. Whether you think it's a correct reading of Hegel, that's for you, the audience, to decide. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into Hegel here. But he posits.
I've got a standard line about Hegel, which is, having known a lot of Hegelians, you have an option in life. When you're looking at Hegel, you have a choice.
Okay.
Are you going to understand Hegel, or are you going to understand anything else about the world ever again? Every single Hegelian that I have met that has even like a more than like cursory understanding of Hegel is completely incapable of comprehending the simplest things about the external world. They become just Hegelians. It is a totalizing thing to be.
We just stopped at Hegel. We didn't try to. No.
Yeah, so this is Hegel is the most influential political philosopher of the modern world. Also, he seems to be the most brain rot inducing thing to have ever existed. So,
I mean, maybe we should be showing the iPad kids phenomenology of spirit. Why are we showing kids Subway Surfers? Get kids on that Hegel.
Maybe Subway Surfers includes the phenomenology of the spirit, and we just haven't seen it yet.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh no, that's a video. That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay.
But what do we mean by animal? So his definition for animal behavior is to exist alongside one's surrounding environment. Right? It's one's surrounding environment. Human behavior is to struggle against it. Right? Because animals exist as part of the system, but humans inherently want to resist that change. They want to struggle against it. Instead of being an animal, humans are what he calls snobs. Right? Human snobbery, he calls it. So, following the end of the Second World War, right? Following the end of the Second World War, consumer goods began to be produced in lockstep with media and social trends that in turn would dictate what consumers would then buy, which would then dictate what corporations would then produce in a sort of process, right? So Kojev describes this as an animalistic mode of consumption, or American animalism, he calls it.
Of course.
But considering that he calls, the inverse is human snobbery, right? Which was the course for most of history, right? Humans constantly trying to break out of their natural condition forever until he saw post-war America and was fascinated by what he saw. Let me find the exact quote, because I have it here. The exact quote of... Let's see. He predicted that in this society, the world would become a place where people would perform musical concerts in the fashion of frogs and cicadas, would play amongst themselves like young animals, and indulge in love like adult beasts. Which, Azuma argues, in today's computerized consumer society, this prediction has been realized, is his argument. Right?
Interesting.
But it's worth noting that I don't think he means to say that animalism is strictly negative, because his counterexample to American animalism, Japanese snobbery, which is ritualized suicide, is his exemplified example of what does it mean to deny the environment to that extent that you're willing to end your own life because of social protocols instead of doing what is natural and easy. So I don't think,
I had to double check. Kojev did die before Mishima. I did have to check that. I was like, this sounds like a person who was like permanently scarred by Mishima's.
Oh, he saw Mishima coming.
Very. I don't want to say funny, but like cartoonish ending to Mishima's life.
It was grisly, but it was cartoonish. Yes.
It was cartoonish. The most living cartoon that has existed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll stop. I lost my thought. I lost it. Yeah.
Basically, the only thing was like that's basically his point, where he doesn't view human snobbery as strictly a positive, so much as it is because it's like at its extreme, it involves denying your own ability to live because of something that exists outside of the natural world, right? So that was extreme, and the book does explain that Kojev's ideas about Japan were of course pretty Orientalist, but I think but this is the argument that the book is trying to make, this sort of human animal dichotomy of existing in tandem with nature versus existing in opposition to nature. Right. Yeah.
Oh.
But I want you to elaborate on what you think about like him being on the wrong track about this.
Well, so where I think he's on the wrong track, and this is something I think I see in other parts of Kojev's writing. I was familiar with him as a political theorist, not as a theorist of human nature. Because I know him via Fukuyama, the worst way to get to know a theorist, and the what I see as coherent in both sets of Kojev's thought is that he's got this idea that these are the way that it's being presented here, and this is again coherent with his approach to political philosophy, is that these tracks cannot be mixed. And whereas when I talk, I have a bit of a canned thing about snobbery, a little canned mini lecture about snobbery, which I'll make you suffer through, which is that I think it's good to be a snob about one or two things in life. I think it is good because being a snob is a particular type of joy. I am a snob about action films, and this means that I am getting more out of Fury Road and Police Story than I would if I wasn't a snob, if I wasn't aware of all of the minor intricacies and difficulties in the execution. And it also means that I fully cannot enjoy MCU action sequences. They drive me insane. They're so bad to me. They are literally worse than watching paint dry to me. But I think it's also important to have totally non-snobbish forms of enjoyment. The one that I refer to for myself canonically is raspberries. I can have some of the most dog shit raspberries on the planet, and I am just happy to be having a raspberry. I just love having a raspberry pretty much no matter how bad it is. And the thing about why I think you can't be a snob about everything is that it's just exhausting and takes a lot of time. And you live in linear time, and you will run out of time. You cannot be a snob about everything in your life. You need to have things in your life that you just kind of take them as they are and just deal with it. Because you're just going to run out of time, right? You just will literally die of old age before you make any real progress if you live like that. So you can't be a snob in God time, I suppose. And yes, Mix, that's
Stop it, God time.
Yeah, Mix, that's kind of my point, is that like you have a budget on your cognition, and in order to really get into like the good fun snobbery, it doesn't just require thinking, it requires studying and experience, and those all take time. And I think that means that all of us have to do both human snobbery and animalistic consumption. I don't think that anybody can really only do one. I don't think that you can live. I think it's a very difficult life. I think it's a harder life to only live on one of those tracks, and that's how Kojev seems to put those in opposition, and I put them as time and place.
Of course,
is how I think of this. And again, like this is like Kojev in his political theory is very much a like all or nothing kind of guy. Like the political project that he favored wasn't working out the way he wanted it to, and so he said it's just completely abandon making the world a better place and surrender to the machine and become a total cog in it. Kojev,
like,
baby.
I do like Mix's observation where like real snobbery, applying cognitive thoughts to sensory experiences, and demanding that cognitive experiences be sensory rather than cognitive. I like that.
I like that. I mean, this is. I think Mix may have came in after I talked about this. I really do not like when people try to dismiss doing criticism as, oh, it's just not that deep.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't think that ever really happens. I think that you can always do serious critique of anything. I think that you can do serious critique of the smallest goddamn things, and anybody who's worked in an art in any level knows that there is real thought and real work, or just anybody who's read Taoist works. Actually, if you've read any Taoist works, you know that making a pot for just putting water in is a serious endeavor that involves real skill, and there's real differences between a well-made pot and a poorly made pot. There just is. Like, and like it's you can be very seriously cognitive about potsherds, as much as mid 20th century Roman historians tried to avoid doing that. We're getting far afield here.
But we were talking about being animals versus being snobs. So early otaku, right? Early otaku.
Hold on, is it next slide yet?
No, not
okay,
yet.
So on Kojev. Okay. Yeah.
So early otaku actively knew, they were aware of the contradiction of still engaging in cultural activities, usually reserved for children, as adults, and indulged in that and formed an identity out of that, of this sort of snobbery towards, even though I'm an adult, I still derive pleasure from childish things. Culture, but then eventually you see this shift where this resistance is now, you don't really have that sort of resistance now because it's normalized. You know, if you want to watch a show about idols for kids, they will have a separate show for adults to come after they have the morning show for children. They have subsumed. Yeah.
All right.
But yes, but that's where that comes from. So let's next slide.
Well, there we go.
So we're finally answering the question an hour later. What is a database animal? Let's break that bit by bit. According to Kojev, under late capitalism, goods are produced and consumed according to media trends as this sort of consumerist, animalist ecosystem. Pop cultural consumption patterns in the postmodern age focus on elements or fragments of narratives over whole narratives in and of themselves. I did forget to say, I think I deleted it for brevity, but I did want to say that just because modern or postmodern pop culture is very fragment focused does not mean that the desire for narratives is gone. It still exists, right? But then that's what leads into specific narrative characteristics and tropes as becoming fragments in and of themselves, right? Like, have you seen the TikTok where the person reads a book and says, I was recommended this book, it was so good, and then says, but it's not in first person, so I cannot read this. Or somebody going...
So I'm gonna have to alert you that if... Remember who you're talking to, Lux.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think the answer is when you ask, have you seen the TikTok?
Maybe? Maybe. Look, I didn't think you were really as deep into Katawa Shoujo as you turned out to be.
That's fair.
That's a surprise. So that's
fair,
like the one thing that made me realize that maybe I shouldn't. So I was like, but no, it was posted to Twitter too.
Yeah, that's
I don't mean you saw it on TikTok. It was probably in the context of something.
I have heard it referenced. I've heard it referenced,
yes.
and
Okay.
I've seen different versions of that.
Okay.
And I will admit myself to having my own kind of versions of that.
Okay.
None as extreme as that. That feels wild to me that somebody would struggle with third person narration, because that's really common.
Like, or somebody wanted, we talked about like tropes, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was another where somebody's like, I'm reading this book, but wouldn't it be so helpful if they listed in like the sort of the frontispiece all the different tropes that there were in the book, so at a glance immediately.
That's a person who definitely reads way more AO3 than books, which is I don't know. That's odd to me. That's odd to me. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's definitely odd to me, because like when I think about like my versions of this, it's like it's more often with games I can express this.
We can talk about games.
Yeah, it's because I definitely have a thing where, so I played Signalis recently. I was talking with
Right.
I mentioned that at the start of this. So that was the most recent game I completed, and I'm pretty Signalis pilled right now. I'm thinking a lot about Signalis, and Signalis is definitely a game where the implied underlying world makes me want to write like stories inside of it about like what other people's lives might have been like in this world,
right?
That weren't the ones that we saw. But it's the thing is, like, I don't really like playing horror or watching horror as a rule. I if something's horror, that tends to be a significant mark against me bothering to get around to it. And I know that this is a me thing. Like, this is a me thing where like I watched The Thing and I was mostly just like, that was okay. I'm like the only person I know that's like watched The Thing and was like, oh, that was an okay movie.
I think I mean, when did you watch The Thing?
Like 2 years ago.
So I guess it's like that one thing. I guess that's me and Ghost in the Shell, like the movie, where I feel. I mean, I don't know if I would have just been like strictly as like, it was okay, but my feelings on it were more like, if I'd have seen this closer to when it was released, this would have changed my world. But unfortunately, I've been so immersed, or people have been borrowing so much from it that I've seen this all before, so it was kind of
I mean, you do seem like the type of person who that is actually an interesting thing to know about you, because you did seem like the kind of person who like had their life changed by Standalone Complex when you were 9 years old.
Oh, I mean, Standalone Complex, yes, but I'm talking about the movie. Standalone Complex, absolutely a banger.
Okay. But I mean, for me, like, it's in no small part, for me, this is just, again, me personally, like, gory things and jump scares both like ratchet me away from emotional thinking and towards like really abstract cognitive thinking,
right? Because
I'm pretty squeamish, so in order for, like, I've had to do medical things, like I've had to deal with people who are injured and stuff, and like, so when I encounter gore and blood, I get intellectual, I shut down emotionally, I become colder, and so I'm not engaging with horror films on the level that most people want to be and want to talk about them, where it's very emotive, very sensory. I am engaging with them on a very non-sensory level. And so I've tended to find horror so this is why I don't like to do a lot of horror media, because like I'll watch a horror movie and what I'm taking out of it is not related to what anybody else I'm talking to is taking out of it. I feel like I'm consuming a completely different piece of media, and it feels like it's me. It feels like that one's on me. And my own particular issues. And so I get like I get in, I like watch a horror and like the jump scares, etc., and I'm just like, I'm less invested. And so those tend to be a mark against me wanting to do them, which is, again, why I liked playing it a lot on stream, because while I was on stream, I'm in a different mental states. I'm in the streamer mind. I'm in streamer brain. I am thinking about myself being on stage, and so it was good for that. But that's kind of like my version of this, where like if somebody says, oh, it's like this cool fucked up classic slasher horror, I'm like, you're going to have to work really hard to convince me to watch this. Like, you're going to have to like put in like you've now put like a lot of negative points towards me actually getting around to watching this. Is my kind of thing. I don't know if I have anything where it's like as simple as like it's in first person, so I can't do it.
So like, yeah, no, it still baffles me. I know that people have been going like, yeah, no, for some reason, commodifying literacy has I don't know if I'd go as so far as to say that it's harmed people's capacity for literary interpretation, but it does, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that in the case of, I mean, if we want to talk about like harming the broader public's ability to engage in literary interpretation, if you want me to engage in that in a serious way, I'm going to talk about education reform and like ways that the public school has changed over the decades.
Honestly, like you bring up points that I do want to pick your brain on after, because there are some kind of broad observations about like what the thing is trying to say, but I'm like, yeah, I want to unpack your brains about some of it.
Okay.
Going back to what a database animal is. What's up?
I was looking at the last line on the slide. Keep going.
Yeah.
All right,
what is a database animal anyway, right? We've already talked about how pop culture emphasizes fragments of narratives, right? This is what we consume, right? These are the products that are being sold. We consume patterns, genres, tropes, fragments, aesthetics, even like narratives or the presence of like a broader overarching narrative. Lore has been commodified and is an aesthetic signifier. It's like, oh, does this game have a lot of lore? That is now an aesthetic signifier. So now even the notion of a narrative is aesthetic. But then you'll notice that I said the word we here because, as it turns out, next slide, it was us all along. We were the database animals. The database animals came from inside the house. It was the friends we made along the way. It was us. It will always be us. This is just the system that we exist within.
Yeah, this did not feel like this was something that was external to the world. This felt like describing the weather almost.
Yes.
Like this is how we live, and if it's an uncomfortable set of metaphors, that's a discomfort with looking in the mirror.
Yes, it's just that this is just the natural. This is what we were conditioned to do, considering what exists now, how we think about things, right? That's database animals. It's us. Surprise. Next slide. Or it's like, is a process of the human animal making itself dumber for the sake of its intellectual comfort. I mean, not deliberately for intellectual comfort, but certainly that is what consumers want. That is what the system will provide. But why this book changed my life? Basically, Otaku, Japan's Database Animals, is one of the few books that make a serious attempt at applying these postmodernist ideas of Kojève, of Jameson, et al., to a modern context, specifically a modern context that is relevant to me, and I suspect a lot of people. We're VTubers on the internet. We pretend to be anime on the internet. It is extremely relevant, right? You read Jameson for the first time, just without context, it's going to be difficult to sort of, unless you have studied sort of that, it's difficult to how these ideas are made relevant to you. Or I guess that is what I've always felt is sort of a weakness of Jameson's, his inability to sort of apply his ideas to the late 90s, 21st century context.
Well, I mean, Jameson has done a better job than a lot of other people who I know who have suffered from this wound have done at keeping himself cool and collected and engaged. But he is a person who has not actually survived the Cold War. He is trapped inside the Cold War. He is a person whose political project and goal in life was for a Cold War context. Like he's oh, sorry, I hit the back button there. This is something that's this is something I was actually talking with some historians about recently, because I was in a pop history context, right? Like there were some historians and some non-historians talking about history, and I technically was one of the non-historians, again, sociologist, not technically a historian, but still from academia. And quite a few people were very surprised to learn that there aren't actually very many Marxist professors. Jameson is one of them, but the Marxist professor as a like type of person who has this full Marxist perspective that informs all of their work and is part of a not just intellectual but political project of bringing global socialist revolution in the name of the Soviet Union is unsurprisingly kind of a dead end in a world without the Soviet Union. And they technically exist. There are still some guys you can meet like that, and Jameson is one of them. But for the most part, it's an old man's game. Younger academics don't really do that because, again, in a context where the Soviet Union doesn't exist, the question of how can we further the Soviet Union's political project to a global consideration isn't very relevant. And, you know, the sort of reason why America had a lot of people find this kind of surprising. This is a part that I think people often kind of find surprising, because you see on like Fox News and stuff like, oh, like these Marxist professors are pushing this agenda. Professors don't really drive pop culture. I feel like this is like a point that's like almost too obvious to have to make, but people like yes, like people like Foucault and Chomsky occasionally show up on the news, but like occasionally they're trivial. They like compared to John Lennon, they're nothing. Even like at the height of this cultural movement of like the Marxist
about
professor, like compared to a Lennon or a McCartney or or Johnny Carson or Pete Seeger or almost any, or
even E.L. James.
E.L. James, like they were nothing. They were nothing. The reason why Marxist professors were kept around was because the continued existence of the Soviet Union made that kind of Marxism-Leninism have a sort of weight to it. It gave it a kind of heft and clout that made it need explaining. Like it cried out for an explanation that we're looking at that the Cold War exists. And then on top of that, if you want to be like the real cynical conspiracy theorist about this, again, professors don't drive pop culture. They're not driving cultural change. But if you leave around some Marxist professors in the university system and you're the type of person who is interested in furthering America's political project, those professors can be useful at helping you predict and understand the Soviet Union. And so it's useful to people who are opponents of the Soviet Union much more than the Soviet Union itself. And again, Frederick Jameson is from that world. He's one of these guys. I'm not trying to say that he was like on the FBI payroll or some crap like that. Like, no, I don't think that's true at all.
Well, no, you heard it for your first. Yeah, Frederick Jameson's an op. Frederick James is a psyop. You heard it here. You heard it here.
I don't think he was, but I do think that the context that made Jameson's main project as an intellectual and as a political figure operate is not the context that's existed since the 90s, and he has kind of survived by just pretending that nothing happened. Which I've got to say is not the least healthy option, because Nick Land exists, so we definitely know that there's a worse option for guys who have this happen to them. But yeah, like he's this is a good point about this book about Otaku, that like Kojev and Jameson are living in and discussing a Cold War context where the world is defined by a global spanning tension for the soul of humanity between Marxism, Leninism, and whatever we want to call
this
that we live in today. And now I talk about this with some. There is still a fight for the soul of the world, but it's not happening with such obvious camps that control whole states. You know, there are people who want the world to be very different than I want the world to be, and I would consider them my political opponents. I want this to be a world where people are nice to each other and get along. And there are people who hear me say that and recoil like I held their hand down to a hot stove. I think those people are bastards. But that, you know, I think that this is, I've gotten my, but there isn't like a country that is like the country of people being nice to each other and a country of people being weird racist bigots. Like these are debates that are happening at a transnational and intranational level. They're not happening on a nation to nation level like the Cold War was. Yeah. Anyway, that was a bit of a divergence for me to just
that makes sense. You explained it. I was going to say, it's like, well, that's my beef with realpolitik and sort of internationalist realism.
Oh, I mean, my beef with internationalist realism is that it actually does not produce results nearly as good as it claims. I think a scientific evaluation of the actual productivity of international realism as opposed to international idealism is that it works sometimes and it fails sometimes. It does not have a uniquely better track record than political idealism.
And you know, confirmation bias fills in the rest.
Yeah. I think very often is I think this is actually a thing that I run into fairly frequently with a couple of people I know who think that realism equals good, and so they'll hear that something is like a realist philosophy and they'll just like it instinctively before they even know what the contents of that realism are. Which I really want to just to drive home in case somebody in this chat is of that mindset. Empirical realism is the one where I think it's really where it's the most extreme, because not empirical realism, I guess realist empiricism, but epistemological realism, there we go, that's the word I was looking for, not empirical. Epistemological realism isn't actually compatible with science. Like you can't be an epistemic realist and believe that the scientific method works. Like this is why you need to be like a little bit careful. Like it's worth knowing like what the term is. And international realism is another one where it doesn't mean what works. A lot of people think it means it works. The realism is when things work. International realism is not when things work. International realism is when is really just the simplest way to explain it is it's very short-term thinking. Mm-hmm. It's when you make your international moves based on the shortest term benefit.
Yeah, and based on, but also that it it perceives all struggles as being conducted on the state level, right?
Yeah,
the state is the actor.
Oh yeah. It's definitely designed. I mean, that's like definitely a thing about like any IR theory. So they're only designed to deal with states. They're weak and fuzzy when dealing with non-state problems. And problems within states. They're very much like, how does a country relate to another country? And that's definitely a limitation of IR realism. It's definitely, and you know, IR realism in particular is tends to sand off very important things that are useful to understanding in diplomacy that I think are actually very valuable. But yes, that was all just to explain why I thought it was so compelling, why it sells to me so hard to say like this is Kojève and Jameson being brought into the 21st century. Because they're philosophies that they're writers that are very grounded in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, and this is the book that tries to connect those dots. What happened in between the 60s, 70s, 80s to today, right? Now it's what would Jameson what would Jameson have said about anime cat girls? That's the real, these are the real questions.
Apparently he just published a book. He might interested in that. I literally I literally saw that this morning on that, like, apparently Jameson did publish something recently. So
what? Okay, I gotta look at that.
Maybe he's just been doing speaking engagements, but it was like, yeah, Jameson's like Jameson is like hasn't lost his flair at all. And I'm like, really? Like what? I'll leave the
I still like him, but
yeah,
he's trapped in the past. Trapped in the past as he is. I still like him.
I didn't say I dislike him. I've got critiques of him, but I don't.
Yeah.
He's not somebody who I look at and I'm like, what the hell is this shit?
Yeah, he's like he got point. This is Hiroki Azuma. Yes, correct. It is he.
It is exactly that guy.
But the book itself, right? The book itself, I wasn't able to really get when I read it back in whenever it was I read it first, until I familiarized myself more with sort of what is modernism, what is postmodernism, what are the implications of, how does this relate to capitalist production, capitalist consumption, all of that, right? But it's definitely, only then it did at least get me started down that path of like questioning the existence of pop culture, the form, its shape, in the broader context of the world that we sort of live in, which, leads into, I'm only covering like the very broad thing. I've only really defined the argument of otaku database animals, but the book itself is incredibly ambitious. Like one of the things that he talks about in the book is like, okay, otaku culture is like hypersexual, right? It is hypersexualized because fucking go to an anime con. If you throw a rock in any direction, you'll hit at least 2 people with an ahegao hoodie.
Yeah.
I don't need to explain to you what that is. Yes.
No, you don't.
Okay. Okay.
Very, very amusingly, I'm still thinking about a few years ago. I had a roommate who was not particularly into anime, but his girlfriend was.
Okay.
And I remember her coming over, and I was like, I just remember like squinting my eyes and like thinking for a few seconds. And I was like, I just had to say, "Hey, is that an ahegao miniskirt?" She was very proud of it.
that's the thing, right? It's like you have this presence of like highly sexualized fragments within the broader spectrum of otaku culture or just nerd culture in general, but at the same time, a trend of people being sort of conservative, right?
Yes. That's so we do have an incoming ad break in a couple of minutes, so
no worries.
we're about 2 minutes. But yes, that's something that this hits on something that I've been studying more recently from a sociological perspective, and I find deeply interesting is these very complicated disconnects around sexuality in the 21st century. The biggest one that I highlight all the time is that we have a perception. Almost everybody perceives that each generation is more sexual than the previous one, and the overwhelming evidence is the opposite.
Yeah.
As long as we've been keeping tracks, which only goes back to the 50s, we don't really have any stats before World War II. The age that people first have sex has been going up. The lifetime number of sexual partners has been going down. The number of extramarital affairs has been going down. Everything has been trending towards desexualization in actual activity. But the perception of sexuality has been increasing. And of course, we're kind of talking around the fact that we're often talking, me and Lux are often talking around like Twitter and Tumblr discourses. Around art, and one of the ones that's completely insane is people being like, "Oh, there's so much sex in modern art," and I'm like, I watch on our watch-alongs on my Discord server. We will watch like 70s, 80s movies. Those things have some fucking sex scenes.
It's true.
Like those things have some pretty like you will see a very sexual sex scene. It will not just be like 2 faces get kind of close to each other and then it hard cuts, which is like a more modern way of doing a sex scene. Like, no, this is like a 40s way of doing a sex scene. No, but it's this perceptual gap is very interesting to me. And like, why would otaku culture be this culture where there's so much porn, just flat out porn in a way that even other pop culture fandoms don't really do. Save like supernatural smut fix. Like unless you're like searching the smut tag on AO3, you're not really going to see. People don't do this for Mad Men. People don't do this for The Sopranos. People don't even do this for fucking Game of Thrones, which has sex.
No one does this for The Sopranos. Okay, but then why was there a whole Twitter trend talking about how Tony Soprano could get it? Like that was a trend. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, but that was not very explicit. That was just like an acknowledgement that James Gandolfini is considerably hotter than Andrew Tate.
It's true.
Okay, that's a really amazing point for the ads to hit. Oh my god!
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely do need to as well. So we will be back in a few moments. Please bear with us, audience. And we're back.
We are back. So, how about that Tony Soprano?
Tony Soprano. Thank you, Emperor's Armpits. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean that is, well, I mean it was kind of your point actually originally, that like otaku culture has a deeper degree of polarization on this. This internal polarization between sexualization and like what that sexuality actually is. And it's, I feel like I would need to be more in tune with what's happening in the BL scene. I really want to have Ronan come on here and talk about that because she would know way better than I would. But it is this kind of interesting thing where like I witness in the arts that I read in otaku culture, there's, you know, like the mangas and animes, there's a really distressing almost fear of certain types of sexual contact. Mix tells me the bad news, which is what I was expecting to hear, which is that you know, idealistic and tropey in a way that no real gay romance comes close. So that's disappointing. That's disappointing. I was hoping that it would. I mean, I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I was pretty ready for that. I was pretty ready for it to be that, but I just didn't want to say it without being more familiar with it. But that's very much like how much of the romance in these series and genres operates, and I do wonder if sometimes that's part of why you wind up with some of the more insane authors specializing in Yuri in particular, that Yuri does seem to be a bit different, where it does seem to involve some amount of romance that is at least like recognizable to me as an adult person as a way that people are romantic with each other. and not just like I noticed that somebody was pretty and then rewrote my entire personality in order to appeal to them in a way that I find creepy and weird and middle schooler.
And yet oddly human. So it's like, oh, this is, I can see people doing this.
Oh no, it's very human. It's just also,
I know,
don't
like,
think it's very adult.
But the sexuality and like that sort of that frontier of sexuality versus actual like sex, right? Like desire of the other, desire of non-self versus like these raw biological impulses, right? It's one of the few frontiers that the modernists have left. But he does try to address it. He does talk about it in the book among other subjects, but to deviate from the book, I think one of the more compelling arguments that I'd read about it, or at least I don't know if I'd call it an argument, but was from a journal article about the furry fandom. Actually,
Okay.
right?
Furry fandom has a lot going on. That's a rich text.
Yes, it's a rich text, right? Where everybody thinks, you know, the stereotype is that they're perverts, right? Which they're not, by and large, right? It's only a subsection that turn it like sexual, but I guess one of the things that I read was like, how did they put it? It was something to do with how their desire often, you know, the people that choose to have sex in these like fursuits run up against the actual or conflict with the actual like physical reality of trying to do it, because you can idealize sexuality, you can idealize desire that this is what you want, but then at a certain point you are confronted with the fact that this is a $3,000 costume that I might ruin. It's also very hot. It's also uncomfortable to wear. All of these actual like physical things confront. There's like a rupture. Right? And I think the book, or at least the going back to Otaku, describes it as this sort of sexuality among pop culture consumers. And I was like, this is like, I think I would go so far as to include phrases being sort of otaku because they're like enthusiastically geeky about this, right? Kind of in that sense. I believe them to exist within this sort of continuum. But the author describes this sort of sexuality, this sort of conflict, this almost contradiction between, you know, the actual physical reality of wanting it and their projections and desires, what they actually want, that, you know, the where they don't overlap. The author describes this as a strange Janus-faced quality. Because on the one hand, they consume numerous perverse images, while on the other hand, they have to reckon with their with like a surprising conservatism towards physical, you know, carrying it out physically. You know?
Well, what actually kind of hits me here is going back to a ancient and disgraced publication, The Exile. Which I'm sure that somebody in the audience here heard that and just had a PTSD flashback from it. But The Exile had an article years and years ago. There was the pop culture version of an insight that has been made many times, which is that in Russia, in post-Soviet Union Russia, they had the sexual revolution that we had in the United States. The United States and Canada, for that matter, and the UK, had a sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s, brought about largely by a resurgent women's liberation movement in tandem with, notably, the pill, with access to reproductive control that we did not chemically have for much of human history. All combining to create a legal and cultural series of changes where women were able to sexualize themselves in a way that empowered them. And when this series of innovations and technologies and cultural changes hit Russia, they were able to, the powers that be, however you want to, whatever agency you want to put on it, however you want to put the agency, whether you want to put it as completely non-agentic or like a conspiracy or whatever, however it plays out, the objectification that was done in the West was done without any of the liberation. Right. Those two things, kind of the liberation and objectification and sexualization, went hand in hand in the West, and when they hit Russia, they did not. They were just further instruments of entrenching existing patriarchal norms and making them even more deep. And I think that there's something to be said for kind of that happen. That might actually be the more normal thing to happen. That because that's certainly what conservative thinkers think in other countries, right? Conservative thinkers that's like a very common Islamist critique of America, is that bikinis are a form of oppression of women. It's a very common Islamist critique. It's a very common socially conservative critique from many non-American, non-Western cultures, that Western cultures, by having these objectifying forms of fashion, by having these sexualized forms of fashion, those are things that are anti-liberatory towards women. Those are things that are more misogynistic than conservative dress codes, which obviously Westerners tend to disagree with. Most Westerners kind of balk against the idea that a burqa is more liberating than a bikini, basically. And the way that the way that otaku culture has reacted, where the sexualization seems to have gone along with sexual conservatism. It's weird to me as an American, but that doesn't mean that it's incoherent. That just means it's not the culture that I'm a part of.
It does raise the question, right, of whether gender or sexual liberation has actually been achieved to begin with, as a starting premise. But I guess if it's across cultures, we assume that our culture is the one where we've achieved true feminist liberation.
Yes,
but I don't think that's actually been the case.
Well, I mean,
anywhere.
It's a kind of complicated. I think it's a very complicated. I mean, I think everybody's feelings on are complicated, to be blunt. I think almost everybody has a complicated set of feelings about this, where I think most people in the West would consider, I should say, people who are who are on the feminist side of the equation, which would include me. So I want to be trying to be neutral here, trying to be descriptively neutral here. Okay. The general tendency of people who think that the sexual liberation was in general a good thing, view the process of sexual liberation and women's rights and stuff in the United States and related countries as an incomplete project, to put it mildly, to put it in its simplest terms, but would generally still view it as closer to complete, closer to successful than in most other countries. Okay. That I think would be the common view for most Westerners, like looking at, they would say that like the West isn't sexually liberated if they're only looking at the West internally, but if they're looking at the West and comparing it to non-Western countries, they will often say that it is a sexually liberated. The United States is sexually liberated. Let me put it another way. The United States is not sexually liberated in relative to the United States. The United States is sexually liberated relative to Japan. Would be, I think, how a lot of people would see it. Right. Which I don't know if that's fair. I don't know.
It's about personal values. And
it's about personal values, and I think also, I think that a lot of times when people would, particularly in the case of Japan, I think that it's missing that Japanese feminism has actually been a pretty successful project. It has. It's actually gotten quite a lot done. There has actually been quite a lot of liberation, and there are ways in which a Japanese woman would... I can see ways in which a Japanese feminist would say that they have been more successful than an American feminist. You know, abortion is much more protected, for example. It's a very straightforward one. Right. You know, abortion rights are much more liberal in Japan than they are in the United States. And so there's a matter of priorities, there's a matter of values, but there's also a matter of like who you're talking to. And I do think this is actually probably getting to Jameson's biggest perspective here, like getting really big on really going back to the Jameson here. I think it's entirely possible to talk about otaku culture in Japan, in the Japanese context, as being an exceptionally conservative part of Japanese culture.
It does, like, I will say that the book does talk about the sort of historical context about how it reconstructed a simulacrum of Japan's past from what Americans left behind. Is like early sections of the book, but I wanted to really emphasize the thrust of the thing, but I didn't want to like go back to at the end of World War II.
Yeah.
Japan. I didn't want to go that far back, but they do talk about that in the book, and yeah. Oh, there is that argument.
Yeah. That's pop art. Is that pop art CO or pop art %sign?
Oh no, CO. It's like because Azuma is one of Murakami, and I mean the pop art Murakami, not the novelist Murakami.
Okay.
How he talks about how, you know, this conceptual artist, incorporates otaku themes, but also criticizes it based on like it's only a surface level reflection. Murakami's work is only a surface level thing because from the work itself, you can tell that he's an outsider to otaku art. He's just incorporating these symbols that don't really communicate anything to actual otaku.
I'm going to be a really bad host here for a second.
Yes.
And I'm going to switch the view over to a collection of Murakami's art.
No, that's fine.
So
Go
people
ahead.
can see what we're talking about.
No, that's you being the good host. Actually, I was going to say, let's pull that up.
Me backseat driving here. So people might not. To me, I look at this and I've never actually looked at Murakami's art before. Instantly recognizable to me as pop art. Instantly recognizable to me as riffing on what's that fucker's name? The guy who got shot.
I know who got shot. Lots of people got shot.
The guy who got shot by Solange. The pop artist who got shot. 15 Minutes of Fame. What's his name? Did the soup cans.
Oh, Warhol.
Warhol, yeah. I think it's really funny to refer to him as the guy who got shot.
That's like a lot of people in the 20th century.
Yeah. But like you can see the resemblance to Warhol immediately.
Yes.
Right. And I think go ahead.
So let me find the specific things where he talks about that. But in general, he is somewhat critical of Murakami's work. It's like you can tell to someone that is within the culture. To someone that is within the otaku culture, you understand that these are just empty references. You are taking only the surface, like this thing.
Yeah, this thing.
Great. Like this is a simulacrum of a simulacrum.
Oh, I mean, a lot of these read to me as almost directed insults.
Yeah, so it's
to
like
otaku culture.
If that was the intent, then yes. But was that the intent?
These two pieces in concert read to me as something of a slam on otaku culture. Like looking at these two together. Maybe I'm not present.
There's no I hadn't considered it. I just assumed that this is a cultural outsider appropriating themes from something that he's not actually part of.
Well, it reads to me as these do not come from a place of love.
Yes, I don't think it does either, because otherwise, it would be more of the touchstones would be more recognizable.
The touchstones would be more recognizable. This is like the abstracted idea of a touchstone. It looks like nothing.
That's why that is the movement that he pioneered is called, I guess it's super flat.
That's fair. That's right? A fair description. That's a fair description.
But then you get into the whole, okay, but this guy was legitimized by the art world, so do we treat that as a victory? Can you even apply the idea that, is this a victory for otaku culture or not?
I would say not, in no small part, because I think that part of the internal legitimation of otaku culture is how it is scorned by the high art world, and so being accepted in high art circles is kind of undercutting of that legitimacy. It's kind of delegitimizing. It's being embraced by your enemies.
I agree.
Gringotts brings up that without further context, the person who thinks of as getting shot is Shinzo Abe.
I don't think Shinzo Abe was a conceptual artist. But
he was a social conservative. He was a social conservative, and
conservatives,
Speaking of social conservatives, but yeah, this is stuff that is riffing on. I can tell that this is stuff that's kind of riffing on anime, but doesn't love it.
Yes, it's just we're taking the aesthetics and recontextualizing them.
Yeah, and kind of. This repeated flower painting motif, these smiling flowers, they're increasingly sinister to me. Right? They're like I was actually listening to a podcast about Thomas Kinkade, and how Thomas Kinkade's paintings.
Is that the Painter of Light?
Yes, the Painter of Light, and how his attempts to make cozy cabins actually overshoot so far they start becoming like satanic.
See, I thought you were going to say like that one post about how the idealized past that Thomas Kinkade harkens to is actually an indication of the desirability of fascism or something.
Yeah, no, so that's like what these are mostly about. It does help that Kinkade is an asshole. It does not help that he would not like mind that comparison.
When your claim to fame is being one of the most commercially successful artists, as opposed to anything about what your art means or your actual skill, it's
Glassman has come into the chat, and I don't know if you know Glassman.
He makes the stained glass.
And Glassman loves otaku culture. Like, I think certainly more than I do. I think more than you do. And I think that Glassman immediately saying, I do not vibe with these flowers means that Murakami's kind of hit the mark. Like these feel like they're mocking, these feel mocking to me. Mocking and sinister. They do not feel, none of this stuff is coming from a place of love. These are coming from a place of cynicism. These are coming from a place of disrespect,
a place of postmodernism, one might say.
One might say. We don't need to read all. Well, actually, we might have gone through the entire gallery. Oh, hold on.
That's. I think you went through the whole thing, didn't you?
Yeah, 145.
Nice.
A study in commercial viability on the gallery description below the piece. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I will bring us back to your slideshow.
So I think that's what I wanted to. I mean, other than the incorporation, the speaking of the co-option of what is this? Have I seen the? Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure we showed one of them. I mean,
that was pretty close. I don't think that was fully not safe for work.
It was pretty out there, but it was something. But speaking of sexualization and incorporating images from otaku culture and all that, I wanted to kind of unpack your brain because you are also a VTuber and I am a VTuber. What are your thoughts on, the dominance, the hegemony, whatever, of aesthetic signifiers in the era of the personal brand, of content creation, of VTubing?
It's a thing that to me and how I engage with art is frustrating, because it means that I will talk to other people in this space. I'll talk to artists. I will talk to critics in this space and fans, and I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I am not keeping pace. I look at, I think about what I did for my model, right? Which I relied on an external artist. May as well plug him while I'm talking about him. I gave my model artist, I didn't say like I want this aesthetic signifier, I want that aesthetic signifier. I did say a little bit. I did say I wanted dark academia, but I said I said the emotions that I wanted. I said the emotions that I wanted, and I got them, to be blunt. I feel like this was very successful. What Sensational produced for me is the vibe that I try to convey, and that I try to embody. That and I think the vibe is following the artist, following me, not the other way around. That I think that this is the right model and style for conveying warmth and for ultimately the goal. And I think we're doing it very well today. So thank you very much, Lux, on helping me with this. Is a cozy conversation, an intellectual conversation in a cozy study, like a personal library with a fireplace, and people have got some tea, maybe they've got some whiskey, it's low key, it's relatively quiet, but the conversation topics are expanding, that people are learning, that people are excited, that people are, it's not a party, it's a salon almost. And so but when people talk about like this type of color, this type of thing, I'm like, I don't understand. I feel so out of my depth. And it is definitely an element. I think it's part of the reason why I think I wound up with a design that's kind of unusual. I shouldn't say kind of, it's very unusual. It's very unusual, not just because I'm old, but because it's like you're wearing clothes that a person would not normally, most people would not really wear in real life. You're the fashionista VTuber, so you'd be able to explain this more, but I recognize Japanese streetwear motif. The knapsack across the chest.
Right.
I do recognize these things, the puffy coat, but it's you've got this asymmetry, which is a very common and important part of VTuber aesthetics. I tend to refer to the VTuber aesthetic as very much the Genshin Impact aesthetic.
I was going to say about that, what do you call it? About how a lot of these designs, or like a lot of the designs from Genshin Impact, are the Genshinification of VTubing.
Yeah.
About how it's an arms race almost, it feels like. I mean, I don't know if you see it that way.
I do. Well, I mean, people tend to say that it's an anime aesthetic, but I definitely see elements of it that I never see in anime, but I see in Genshin and Honkai Star Rail.
Right, where it's like, this is what appeals to people. A lot of tiny visual details all at once, asymmetry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the asymmetry.
Which jacket is Impossible? The one I'm wearing?
The puffy one. The one that you can see through.
This is a reference. This is a Louis Vuitton jacket. I had a reference for this. It exists. It is transparent.
Oh, okay. I thought that was. I was like, it looks like a jellyfish. I'm like, I don't even know if that's physically.
Oh, that's the rigging. That's the rigging. Okay. That is the rigging. But the jacket exists. Okay. I showed it earlier, but
okay, fair enough. I'm wrong. I'm the fool.
No. It's fine. It's a jacket that literally no one owns. It's a jacket that I would not own because it is inflatable. It is not.
I'm assuming it's simultaneously inflatable, which makes it extremely fragile, and like a couple $1,000.
Oh, secondhand, probably. But yeah, no, it was like thinking of a color motif, but not wanting to overwhelm the purple was like, oh, transparent. Is there a transparent puffer? Oh yeah, the one Offset was wearing in this one picture.
It's also just going to be so hot.
Oh yeah,
100%. Oh my god, 100%. Negative breathability.
Yeah,
this is the jacket that sweats on you.
We once again we go back to the desire of the other running up against the physical reality of existing in a flesh and blood body. We're back again, right?
Yeah, we actually are. We actually, I mean, admittedly, my model actually does have a not strictly impossible item, but a very impractical item.
I'm like thinking, it's like this is like clothes that I can imagine you wearing.
Oh, I've worn some of this clothing. I actually can cosplay my character pretty readily. But the glasses.
The glasses. Oh.
They don't have an ear connection.
Oh.
They're nose clamp only, which exists. They're just uncomfortable. they're just not very practical or good.
That's true.
They do exist. Yeah. But yeah, it's like this is like I am not dressed like an RPG character. I am dressed like an extra from Knives Out.
Don't sell yourself short. Aspire to be dressed like the culprit from Knives Out.
The main note I gave my designer was Uncle Iroh, but dressed in Knives Out.
I mean that kind of rules, honestly.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. But I feel like I'm largely illiterate in this one because I'm mostly a writer. I mostly know writing. And what I've learned in VTubing has mostly been more on the acting side of things.
That's true.
And the way that I kind of think about this, but that said, I do know people who think about this much more coherently. Like I've talked with I don't know if you know her, Nagi Quetzali. Nagi Quetzali started from visual art before she became a VTuber. She was a visual artist, and like she's talked with me pretty clearly about like what were the aesthetic goals of every part of her design. Every part of her design was thought out very carefully in terms of how would the audience perceive it, how would the audience receive it, how does this interact between her style of VTubing and audience expectations, and even things like, she chose her color palette so that it would show up cleanly in thumbnails on Twitch.
Okay. Would you say, I mean, I do appreciate that kind of thinking because it is true that ultimately fashion is communication, right?
Yes.
It's a set of it is again a set of aesthetic signifiers. It is a shared visual language that indicate about the person. But would you say that sort of thoughtful approach is the norm or more an exception or a minority.
I think Nagi is exceptionally skilled.
Yes.
I think it's a matter of skill, execution, and work rather than just concept.
Right, of course.
I think most of us who are in this space who do not do things the way I did. I think that the way that you've talked, so you could talk a little bit more about this, but my read of your engagement with this has been that you chose a color palette and then you chose things that you liked.
I think it's a matter of, part of it was like, these are, I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, I didn't have like as clear a reference, because you kind of nailed it with Uncle Iroh by way of Knives Out is like, is a masterstroke.
Thank you.
It's genius. It's brilliant. But I was like, what are the vibes I want? Here are a bunch of runway photos that I like. Here are a bunch of images that I like, because do I want to communicate this in words and overcomplicate? Because I have a tendency of yapping a lot. We've been yapping for the last almost 3 hours. So I was like, okay, I'm going to err on the side of not talking, but instead I will show, here are a sequence of images that I have that, you know, communicate the sort of demeanor I want to convey. Kind of bratty, smug, spoiled, gender ambiguous. This is the kind of fashion I want. So it's like, how do we mesh these two together? So like a big one, I think, a big visual reference was the main rival from Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Oh, I think I've heard you mention this before. I think I've heard you mention this before.
Right, the white hair guy with the big jacket, right? That's kind of that was like the big one that inspired Big Jacket. I didn't actually know that Big Jacket was an aesthetic signifier within VTubing, to the point where people make you know, VTuber design bingo cards.
Yes.
Right?
Well,
What I was kind of getting at, that was like, there seems to be like already a shared language, and people kind of design around this rather than thinking about creating the character concept, right?
I will say that I think you are kind of the fool here, because
maybe I am the fool.
You were a bit of the fool here, because a big part of Big Jacket as an aesthetic element, and this is me not using VTubing knowledge, this is me using grunge era knowledge, is that using big jackets and big boots has been for at least decades a way of making the rest of yourself look smaller in comparison, as a way of enhancing cuteness. And in an aesthetic field where cuteness is a major metric, I'm really abusing the concept of the metric here, but it is one of your core stats as a VTuber, is the cuteness stat. That's definitely a tool that people are going to be using to play around with. It is big jackets, big boots. Not as much as boots, because you don't see people's feet all that often. But yeah, big jacket makes people look cute, especially big oversized hoodie. Oversized hoodie is another good one for that.
I thought about like what is a VTuber dump stat?
I will admit that I dumped cute. I did dump cute for myself. Other VTubers did not, but I did. I made a skew build. Look.
All it means is old men can be moe. Okay, that is a thing. Oh, because people think moe means cuteness. No, it's like a feeling of empathy you have. It's like standing it. It's like, they are my blorb.
I'm aware that there's a bit of a gap there to create a confusing pun. But no, I definitely dumped cuteness. Like straightforward cuteness. I dumped cuteness. I dumped gremlin. Those are two of the ones that I dumped pretty hard. Maxed yapping, high cozy. Would be how I'd describe my VTubing. I think that, what is a VTuber? I think different people have different builds. Different people have different builds.
I was going to say, I mean, the obvious answer was like, grass touching.
Yeah, grass touching. Grass touching would be. I do think that if we're going to compare VTubers to other social media influencers, I do actually feel like drama monger is a dump stat for VTubers.
Mm.
Like, it's not like there's no drama mongering inside VTubing, but it's way less present than what I see among like Instagram types or YouTubers, and certainly compared to like Twitter specialists.
I definitely see. I mean, I do still see a lot of drama though.
Oh yeah, no, there is. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, I've seen 2 different 50-page long Google Doc call out sheets. Like, it definitely still happens, but it's just like,
yeah,
it's so much less than what I've seen in like particularly conventional YouTubers.
Yeah,
like conventional flesh YouTubers, like
it also
they're fucking killing each other out here, man.
I guess it does help that the people who usually spread drama within VTubing are the people who don't actually VTube.
Yes.
But just tweet about it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's mostly down to more abstract level choices that people make about why they would get involved in VTubing versus other sides of content creation. I think it's a more abstract decision leads to being into drama being not particularly exciting for us. And again, not that it doesn't happen, it just feels less. It just feels lesser. It feels like it's one that we're kind of dumping, because in order for it to be a dump stat, it has to be present. Like, if it's everybody zeroing it out, it's not a dump stat. Like, it needs to be something that's like at least a couple of people are going into, but they're highly unusual.
Right.
Me dumping cuteness is an unusual strategy, but that's not a dump stat in general. Most people are pumping that cuteness really hard.
It's true.
Most people are pumping that one hard. No, I'm famously deep down the yap skill tree. I think there are some people who are out yapping me, but it's not a long list. It's not a super long list. And a lot of people are out gremlining me. I think most VTubers are more gremlin-y than me.
So I'm like thinking, okay, what? Because we talked about this before a stream, I'm pretty sure, right? We've talked about what you think the word brain rot means, and we kind of came to a certain. But what do you think? What do you think the word gremlin means?
Oh, okay. I mean, to me, it's the sort of rapid fire. Honestly, I think you use the word bratty. I feel like that's relatable. It's a sort of like rapid fire, aggressive, chaotic shouting interaction where the thing that you can kind of predict coming out of the streamer's mouth is that it's going to be what's the word I'm looking for here? Because gremlin is the word that I'm used to. I'm thinking unhinged is a good word for it. To use like Chibidoki would be like the highest, like one of the most gremlin-y people out there, like Chibidoki or Henya. Henya is very gremlin-y. You don't really know what Chibidoki is going to say, but she's going to say something completely insane, like how much she wants to have sex with Bowser from Mario. Discord audio really killed you there. I could tell.
I feel that. I was like, I also looked away because it was an ugly laugh.
That's a sort of like, with me, you can, if something's coming out of my mouth that's like really unusual or surprising, it's that I am. It's probably going to be me like drawing in like a historical literary reference that people are just like totally unprepared for. Right. Be having like a normal conversation, like, oh, this reminds me of like when the Emperor Yongle.
Oh, Yongle.
Poor Yongle. That was I love Veilfisk so much, and that drove me insane. Being like, who's Yongle? What is the dominance of aesthetic signifiers as commodities in their own right?
Because I feel like, with VTubing specifically, because a lot of the things that I see is like you have people accusing one another of like, oh, you stole my motif. I'm what's a random animal that probably isn't that probably isn't like a VTuber that I won't get in trouble for using as an example for this?
There's nothing. You're screwed. There's at least one leech VTuber out there, and I know a VTuber is thinking about switching to being a leech VTuber.
Fine. Okay, I like one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater VTuber. You stole my concept. How dare you? It's obviously inspired or whatever. And it's like a lot of accusations about sort of repeating these motifs when it's like, but these all just refer to the same shared cultural and aesthetic language, though. So it made me think about, so it definitely made me think about that.
Yeah, well,
but
yeah, I mean, I guess this gets to like, again, like the heart of me feeling kind of being the out of touch old man here, that like when it would be I would feel like I was on very shaky ground and probably counterproductive ground if like somebody else made an old man VTuber that wore a cable knit sweater, and if I tried to go after them and be like, oh, you stole my concept, I would feel that was flat out counterproductive for my own goals. Like I'd be like, I don't have any ground to stand on. Like, white old dudes wear cable knit sweaters all the time. Like it's not that weird. And like, I don't know what grounds I would have to claim that I was being particularly unique on that one. It feels like it would be very difficult to make that go anywhere in either the actual court or the court of public opinion. But that kind of speaks, I guess, to either my lack of engagement with this concept of the aesthetic signifier in VTubing, or my lack of creativity, or just me being kind of passive. That I would not take a fight.
I wouldn't say, or everybody else being over aggressive.
Yeah. Well, it's, you're territorial over areas of weakness.
It's true.
And I think I feel very confident and comfortable with my design. So it
is extremely distinctive.
Yeah. So I'm also currently in the market mode of, this is me being the, talking in fucking dumbass number terms here rather than artistic terms here, much to the disgust of any real dedicated artists out here. Another person who is like me, that's good from my perspective. That drives demand for what I'm doing. And it would make me feel a little bit less alone. It would make me feel comforted to know that there were other people doing my shit out there. They would be, I'd view them as a partner, not a competitor. But I think that's something that like we always have in VTubing, right? In this, and honestly, that happens in a lot of economics. Like, this is the Chomsky thing. The Chomsky thing. If you're trying to sell pianos, you can't just sell pianos. You need to sell the entire ecosystem where people want to own pianos. You can't just be the only guy selling pianos. You need piano teachers. You need architects who create houses that have room for pianos in them. You need piano tuners. Like you need this whole ecosystem. And so, people who are infringing on my aesthetic turf are largely driving, as my deep friendship with Vex has probably told people, that the fact that I view Vex as like as a confederate rather than a competitor. Yes. I do kind of wonder about this, right? Because well, and actually, here's going into like the question about otaku. I'm actually going to raise a point that Kari has raised a couple of times, that otaku culture was for a very long time a very reliable business in Japan, and it has been on the downside for years. Anime conventions don't make all that much money. Their margins are low. The margins on anime merchandise are low for years, but for VTubing, it's not the case. VTubing is a high margin, high demand, high growth business right now, and I First of all, nothing, I don't know if anything has been funnier in the world of VTubing than Gura singing at a Dodgers game.
Yeah, we've come full circle.
That was perhaps the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen involved in VTubing. But certainly in corpo VTubing, I can think of a couple of indie moments that I really liked. But in VTubing is even resurrecting some anime cons. I can believe that. And I do think that part of this is, we talked a little bit about Marx, but, when Marx's notion of the declining rate of profit is actually a Smithian, the issue of Smithian competition, that when a market matures, you can't make a profit in it anymore.
Yes.
And it's possible that the anime merch market just matured sometime in the last 15 years, and the VTubing market is a necessary innovation to keep the otaku expenditures going. And not even necessarily the expenditures, really, but so much as if you are trying to make anime merch, it's so competitive, right? That the Smithian competition has ruined all the margins due to, the nature of Smithian competition. And we just haven't gotten there yet with VTubing. We just haven't gotten to the point where selling knockoff Gura merch at conventions doesn't make you any money, because there's so many other people selling knockoff Gura merch. We might just not be there. I'm still just wrapping my head around this, because it's hard for me to think about the individual aesthetic signifiers as commodities in their own right. And maybe I'm misunderstanding here. Maybe I missed something here. So, like, I've got an aesthetic signifier of the small glasses.
All right.
Right, like the small glasses, because that was a specific thing that I did mention to my artist, was like I thought it was I think like the big guy with small glasses
is a very powerful. It does remind me of like the big kind of disheveled hair, kind of very sort of masculine looking big person with a very sort of intellectual bit. Have you seen that one piece of art about the ogre complaining that people say ogre illiterate, and it's true. Ogre can only detect surface level argument in James Joyce's Ulysses.
Yes. Emperor's Armpits has brought the exact reference, which is Bautista and Blade Runner.
Oh, like 2049, the first guy, right?
Yeah.
That
was the exact reference. But it's definitely a thing. I wanted to, but like it's hard to talk about that as a commodity, because like how would you buy it at a store? Like, I guess,
buy it at a store. It's not necessarily the individual like character design elements, right? But it does talk about how eventually, over time, these things will become incorporated as commodified aesthetic signifiers, right? So it's like things can be created, this new character, right? Eventually, as there are more and more people that do it, it then becomes recognized, it then becomes incorporated into that capitalist cultural language of otakuism, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and it's to a certain extent, I guess I kind of did that by like I looked at my artists and I was like, I like glasses. I think they look cool. I think it would be fun and cute for me to have tiny glasses on a big body. And here's a picture of Dave Bautista from Blade Runner 2049 as inspiration on like what I'm thinking about. And I guess I kind of stole that, but I don't know. I guess the reason why I'm having this kind of trouble is like
because you're not used to thinking about your concept in that way, right?
Well, and also the bigger problem is is the way I'm thinking about commodity. I think this might actually just reduce to like a definitional problem. It's had a Wittgensteinian problem here. My notion of commodity is very informed by Karl Polanyi.
Okay.
And so for those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I don't know, Lux, have you read Polanyi? Because he's not like an arts guy. He's a markets guy.
The Hungarian guy?
Yeah, the Hungarian guy at Columbia.
Yes, I'm not as familiar, so do tell.
So Polanyi's biggest argument is that markets are not a fundamental element of nature, which unless you are really deep in economics, this is not a very provocative idea. If you're really economics pilled, that's a very provocative idea, that like societies create markets, markets don't create societies. That was like his big one. It was like he was looking at the anthropology and cultural norms around markets in different societies and how that changed their function. Because the normal way that economists in the classical tradition conceive, particularly the neoclassical tradition, conceive of markets is that once a market, that any way that culture inflects a market is just pure inefficiency, that there's like a pure market that transcends all culture, that all cultures participate in, and a good market is the one that has the least cultural interference. And he made the argument that no, markets are created by cultures to serve the ends of those cultures. Which is not really that provocative, again, if you're from like anthropology or sociology, but if you're from economics, it's like saying that the sun exploded, right? It's like saying that the moon is an illusion or something like that. It's insane. The point where I'm bringing in is that he really propagated and analyzed the concept of the false commodity.
Right.
And the big false commodities that he brings up are money, land, and labor. And these are interesting ones to say as false commodities. And it's fairly, because in order for something to be a commodity, it has to have a couple of traits. It has to be transportable, it has to be storable, and it has to have a use value.
Okay.
Money doesn't have a use value, it only has an exchange value, so it's not a commodity. Land cannot be transported. Like the physical dirt can be, but the value of land is location dependent. You cannot pick up a block of downtown New York City and put it on a ship and drop it in let's go with Louisiana and expect it to have the same value.
Right.
Like you can't do that. It doesn't do that. So it's not a commodity. And labor is not storable. There's an extent to which you can store labor by, like, a very simple example. You could have a worker crank a spring and latch it in place, and that stores the muscle power in the spring force, blah, 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 as potential energy. But really, the nature of labor is that if a person doesn't do the work, you can't have them do the work again later.
Right.
Like they have to do the work in linear time. And it's more of a limitation of the existence of linear time than of like labor specifically, but labor is kind of...
So Kalani would lose his shit in the god time, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, no, you would have to come up with something different. We would have a different theory. we would have a different theory. There are several things about the god time. Like, again, notably, like, Glorantha's so cool. I could talk about Glorantha for so long. Like, one of the things you can do in Glorantha is you can teleport around very easily between sacred spaces. You can summon holy sites to your home. You know, the holy mountain your god was born on. You can do a ritual, and it's inside your house now.
That was a digression, but I couldn't resist. I could not resist when you said linear time. I saw the opportunity. I
mean, it's because Glorantha's so good.
It is very good.
It's so good. But
yeah, like,
like the physical land itself, Gringotts. That's true. You can kind of like create more land, and so, but you can't, like, the real estate is, I guess, what I should have been saying more clearly. Like the real estate value of a location. A location is not transportable because it's in a location. And so, like, I tend to be kind of narrow-minded about what I think of as a commodity. Like, I don't think you can buy these aesthetic signifiers at the store.
I mean, my definition, mine is just plain old Marx.
Yeah,
plain old Marx. A commodity is an object outside of us, a thing that by its properties satisfies human wants of some sort or another. It's just anything that you can consume just by passively enjoying it and watching it, and that's a commodity, right? Like how you can, because you can't really sell a genre by itself.
No, you can't. That's why I'm getting tripped up here. Is I'm like how do you sell the concept of a ponytail?
Right, but people do. People are like, I like the characters with the ponytail, so I am consuming them by buying merchandise with ponytail characters on them.
It's true. We are about to get dinged with ads. So I'll do a temperature check with you, but I think that we can spend some time talking specifically about Evangelion, both because it's a common cultural touchstone. Is this the end of your presentation, by the way?
This is, in fact, the end of my presentation. The last slide is just literally, thank you for listening to me. Yeah.
So we'll put it there. So you've got big U. But yeah, I think Evangelion hits a lot of high points for this. So we'll talk about that when we're back from the ad break. Okay, now I screwed up, and now it says ad starting soon, which means I'm in ad limbo, timing limbo. So I may as well say like why I think this, which is that Evangelion very much has a coherent conventional narrative in a conventional artistic sense, but the actual fandom of Evangelion seems to only be passingly interested in that narrative. Like the fandom around its signifiers has much outlived the actual narrative in the public space, and so that's kind of the big thing I was going for. Dang it, I'm annoyed. If I'd hit the ad, there we go. Now it's ads. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have thoughts about robots. And we're back. And we're back. So, yes, like I said, I did not myself. What am I talking about? That's not where I want to go at all. Totally the wrong segue. Totally the wrong set of preambulatory phases. This
robots.
Is robots. Yes. So, yes. I'm assuming that most people here have seen Evangelion, and if not, know the broad strokes of it. What, depending on where you are, this may or may not be familiar to you, where you are in life, where you are in culture. Evangelion has an extremely extensive second life as a vehicle for advertising the most batshit stuff on the planet. Pizza Hut is a big one.
Pizza Hut.
Mobile
game now.
Mobile games.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been all over the place. It's wacky.
It's pretty wacky.
Gringotts, I do think that using a TV show famous for having one of the most disgusting eating scenes in all of film history as a way of advertising pizza is pretty messed up. It's pretty weird. I also think that a meditation on like self-esteem is not generally considered particularly advertiser friendly. I think that the things that make Evangelion as a story are generally not very advertiser friendly. And in order for them to become advertiser friendly, which I think is where both me and Lux were thinking about this.
Do you deny the fact that a Pizza Hut ad where you see the different slices of a stuffed crust pizza gently fall down onto the pizza box with Comsuser Todd in the background, you're saying that would not go extremely hard? I think it would go extremely hard.
This is why you and I are not allowed to be advertising executives. This is why they're keeping us out of the writer's room.
Look, hey, Pizza Hut, you know where to find us.
Yeah, but I think that in order to turn Evangelion into a vehicle where you can advertise cars and pizza and real estate and mobile games, it needs you to remember what it looks like but forget what it's about.
So the argument here, right? The author actually argues that they didn't have to turn Eva into something that was more advertiser friendly. His argument is actually where it's like that was the case before with like Gundam, but he writes that because your observation, right? Your observation that people nowadays that engage with Eva don't really engage with the substance of the narrative of Eva, right? He writes, at the peak of the craze, the fans of Evangelion who appeared in the mid-1990s, especially those of the third generation of Otaku, did not really have a concern for the entire world of Evangelion. They focused exclusively on the settings and character designs as objects for excessive interpretation or reading up and for character moe. Because, and to further this point, he cites that unlike Gundam, where the sequels to the original were already like planned out in advance, that this is going to take place 3 years after the battle of wherever, right? He writes, Gainax, the original creator's production company, developed the derivative works sold in comic market and at the same time created plans for related concepts. Like this is from its inception. For instance, mahjong games, erotic telephone card designs using the characters, and even simulation games where players nurture the heroine Ayanami Rei, which are all far removed from the originals.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting. Because I was not... I feel kind of silly here, because normally I would be... That's my bread and butter. That's my love, is reading through the production notes and reading through the director notes.
I will say that this is, of course, the author's interpretation of how it went historically.
Do we have smoking gun evidence? That's my question. Is
there smoking gun evidence? Because
that's what I want. Okay. That frustrates me. Then never mind. Now I'm annoyed. I thought that he had. I thought that he had the people at Gainax had done that, and like we had the memos.
I gotta look at it. I gotta actually find it though. Well, but it's just the idea being that this was going to be a multimedia project from the beginning is the argument, right?
Well, I want to know. I want to know.
You want to know? Okay, I'm gonna.
I want to know
Because
because to me as a consumer, it's not an intuitive link. It doesn't feel intuitive to me that of all the mass media products out there on God's green earth, that being associated with Shinji's struggle for self-love would make me more likely to buy something. Admittedly, I am a bad person for asking this because I am not a good person for conventional advertising. I have found over the years. You get me to buy things by I look at Wirecutter or Consumer Reports. I am not a good person for this kind of thing. But it doesn't feel intuitive to me. It doesn't feel like. But that said, the way that the fandom has interacted with the cultural memory of the show is also very out of touch with how I would interact with it at all, ever.
Right.
You know, you've brought up repeatedly in varying levels of explicitness Asuka.
Yes.
You've brought up Asuka repeatedly here because Asuka has become this very deracinated touchstone for a certain type of character. That people have romanticized and sexualized over the years in a way that I do not connect with at all, personally speaking. Right. That I personally see a teenager with a really upsetting life experience, and a metaphor for dealing with I see a type of person that I can empathize with and sympathize with. I don't see a collection of tropes that I would want to possess. When I see Asuka, I see a person who I feel bad for, mostly that I pity, that I wish had a better childhood and hadn't been made into a child soldier. I see a kind of stand-in for all sorts of people that I've known in my life who were expected to grow up and be little mini adults before their time and didn't always deal with the pressure very well.
Right.
I don't see like a waifu. I just don't see it. But she has become that. She has become this and to an extent, as you've alluded to repeatedly throughout here, you can take aesthetic signifiers of Asuka Langley, notably the twin tails, and transplant those into a completely unrelated piece of media and have a character who has a completely different backstory and still invoke some of those emotional feelings from people that they associate with Asuka, that people make assumptions about this new character's personality and persona and behaviors, and relate them back to Asuka in a way that is usually positive to the artistic intent of the subsequent work, of the later work.
Right.
Which to a certain extent, this is kind of how references work in art. Like if you give a character a big long beard and a bad you give a character a white beard and a bad temper, and people start thinking about Zeus,
right?
Going all the way back. You give a character this set of personality traits, and they're thinking about Jekyll and Hyde or Frankenstein. Right. We've been doing that for a very long time, and to the extent that otaku culture is unique, what seems to stand out to me is the extensiveness of it, right, rather than the intensiveness of it. The fact that when people make Frankenstein references, they're usually making references to the early silent films about Frankenstein, but they always keep on going back to it. Ex Machina is fundamentally a retelling of Frankenstein. You know, the Oscar Isaac Ex Machina is functionally Frankenstein. People aren't really using the aesthetics of Ex Machina to make collective Frankenstein references. You know, it doesn't have that multiple layer, so like recursive referentiality. It's the recursivity of the otaku culture that feels different.
Right.
It feels different. The way that it builds and builds on top of itself. I've been invoking Asuka, but I think it's entirely possible that there's like a Danganronpa character that might be the one that people are actually referring to. that started as like an Asuka reference, and it's supplanted.
See, it's like you start with like, character archetypes using these visual signifiers, you know, the twin tails, the gender, personality, and then we're at the point where now we're referencing other works within the same language. So like, I feel like, you know, at some degree, otaku culture is at least, you know, it enjoys how self-aware it is of itself.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? Like, all of these signifiers are understood to be part of the same continuum of otaku culture. But also, I was quiet because I did look up, like, how early did the commercialization of Eva start?
Oh yeah, it's like the same year it came out or some shit, right?
Basically immediately.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not that I think it's impossible. It's just it's unintuitive to me.
It's so different, right? It's so. Well, they've been trying to get it off the ground for a few years, so they needed investors to buy in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not unfamiliar to us in other.
Yeah.
Here's a very good Western example is RoboCop.
Right.
Like RoboCop is a freaking Verhoeven movie about like the commercialization of the police.
Right.
And police militarization and the collapse of Detroit, and it's a bleak film about the intersection of capital and law enforcement. It's a very bleak film.
Yes.
And then buy RoboCop 2. It's a feel-good story about the cool robot cop who is your friend.
Okay, I will say that maybe I was part of the problem because I owned the RoboCop action figure. Well, I mean, like, and I know now you're meant to reflect on what was his name, Murph?
Yeah, Murph.
Or I guess his name is RoboCop, right?
Yeah.
But we're supposed to reflect on him as being like a tragedy, right? As like a tragedy of like, this is a victim of you know, the military police industrial complex. But I had the cool toy, he has the cool gun, he shoots.
Yeah, he shoots. And I mean, like, the show references, the movie references that possibility by like having like the kid-friendly campaigns to try to soften RoboCop's images by like him doing the traditional police thing where like the cop plays basketball with the teens. That was just like going to a schoolyard and going like, stay out of trouble. Gringotts brings up a really excellent way that like this kind of gets squared, which is like Asuka as exploited child actor rather than soldier. Which definitely makes a certain amount of sense to me, right? Like I'm actually driven a little bit insane by that is an interpretation that I see makes a lot of sense for a lot of types of fiction. Like, you know, so here's an example of one of those fiction tropes, that drives me a little bit nuts, is the like hyper precocious super child. You know, there's a very canon example in Overwatch where Diva is not just a war hero and a police officer, she's also a professional StarCraft player, and all of that by the age of like 17. Like, she's done 50 years of work by the time she's 17 years old. I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. This is dumb. And the idea of her being an actor more than a person who actually fought in those wars. Oh, Hana says that they retconned that. I can believe that. Overwatch lore's retconned a lot.
They have, dude.
But what I was going to say was that one of the few places where I've seen they really went hard into the like soldiers who are mostly propaganda was actually a Let's Play of Crusader Kings.
Okay.
Where it got into, they're now into World War II. They've gotten all the way to Hearts of Iron, and the writer's been doing a lot of fiction writing in it, and she did a update where it was 6 soldiers, like a war as told from 6 different soldiers' perspectives, and one of those was from a unit that mostly just does photo ops. That it's a unit that gets like all the coolest tactical, high tech, advanced super Wunderwaffen gear, and it mostly is like they mostly show up to parades. Like they don't actually do very much fighting. And like how the war looks to her compared to like the soldiers who actually fight in the same army as her, who are using, you know, rifles from 2 generations ago. And it's really interesting to me that like functionally a fan fiction, right? This is functionally a fan fiction. To do it as like a Hearts of Iron, it's like the closest thing we can get to doing fanfic of history is Hearts of Iron Let's Play. And it's the first time I've really seen that like really confronted like that. I'm sure that there's an old piece of Golden Age sci-fi that does it, but you know, if it's an old piece of Golden Age sci-fi, it's almost certainly like 75% porn. Oh, they retconned her being a pro StarCraft 2 player, so she's still like a teenager who is also a war hero. Like, ridiculous. But it's but yeah, that's yeah, in the case of Asuka, right? Like Asuka to me, I'm like less, I don't know, it feels like less kind of ridiculous because it's
because it turns out that somebody like that, and she's well adjusted at the age of 15, 16 is like, because it feels like it glorifies that kind of, you are overpressuring the child to overachieve, right? But clearly she has a lot of complexes about this as a direct result of her being brought up that way.
Well, it's you know, me and I've got a friend who I've got a very close friend who I've had a very long running discussion about Ava with, like since we were 20. We've been having an ongoing discussion, and one of the things that he did that I have adored is he just went through and he just looked at what's the win-loss of each of the pilots.
Okay. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, so Shinji is like 8-2. And everybody else is like 1-4. Like Shinji is hard carrying the Ava program.
Shinji's hard. How much of that is nepotism?
It's not. It's not. It's not. He's the loser of the program. Come on. I
was like, oh god, we're fucking Ava sabermetrics.
We're doing Ava sabermetrics. But like the reason why I think this is valuable to bring up is that there is a part of the Ava fandom that thinks of Shinji as like an ineffective loser. And I think that's very contrary to both the intent and text of the show, that like Shinji is actually the most emotionally well adjusted of the 3. Well, 4, I guess. But of the pilots, he's the one who's, despite how badly adjusted he is, he's actually the one who's the most well adjusted. And I think that's an important part of the show, that on paper, he's the worst one. Like they do all these tests, they're doing sabermetrics. We see them do sabermetrics in the show on the pilots, and Asuka is consistently tested as the better pilot on every metric, and then in combat she folds. Yeah. She's a better student, she's a better test taker, she's more well liked in the program. But she chokes. And that's fundamental to like the story and the character, that like it is, I think, partially also, I think in large part it is a show about the inability to truly bureaucratize human emotion. Right. Because that's possibly the largest single visual theme of the show, is like the intersection of bureaucracy and internal emotion. But also it's that like Asuka is deeply maladjusted. Right. Deeply maladjusted. And again, like as I've gotten older, like when I first watched it when I was younger, the I was looking at it when I first watched it, and I was like relating to the youngest generation of characters. I was looking at Asuka and Rei and Shinji as like, how much do I relate to these characters? How much am I like these characters? Right. And then I watched it again when I was in my 30s, and it was very much the adults that I was thinking about this. I could not look at Shinji and Asuka and Rei and think of them as anything other than children.
Because that's, yeah.
Because they are, and they're written as children, I think. Like, right. And you know, I was looking at Misato and Kaji, and I forget the blonde lady's name.
What's her name?
What was her name? As I know, I'm pretty sure it begins with an R. Ritsuko. I just knew it was. I know an R is a Japanese name that begins with R and is not Rei. So it's Ritsuko. Ritsuko and Misato and Kaji, and being like, how much do I relate to these characters? And I'm seeing, and it was a kind of interesting thing because like I watched it as a kid, and I see Misato as kind of an aloof figure that's almost kind of inscrutible, that like she's just an adult doing adult things. And then I look at it as like a 30-something, and I'm like, what is wrong with this woman? Like this asshole. Like
you grow up and you're like, oh god, am I Misato?
Oh, I did not feel like that for a second. I was like, I am mature enough to not try to adopt a kid while I have a house in this state. Like,
true.
Like,
yeah, no, it goes beyond the pale, but it's like that fear, right?
That fear.
That primal fear that, oh god, am I like one slippery slope away?
Oh god. But like the one of the moments in it that like really changes perspective in particular, because I'm bringing up Asuka to talk about this, right? Is that Asuka tries to have sex with Kaji.
Right.
You know, and it's a scene that I didn't think about very hard when I was a teenager. Right. And then as an adult, I look at this and I look at Kaji just like no selling it.
Right.
Just like looking at this and just like not responding and not feeding Asuka's desires here.
Right.
Because Asuka's trying to find additional sources of affirmation. She is trying to prove to herself that she is an adult by engaging in adult style relationships with an adult who is around her. And Kaji is doing the correct thing to do in that situation as an adult, which is no.
It's like no.
Which is no. And it came across as not very meaningful to me as a child, and as an adult it came across to me as really pathetic, really pitiable, I should say. Even I look at Asuka and I just feel pity and discomfort, and it's hard for me to look at this person that I see as a sort of like object of pity who needs better adults in her life. Because Kaji does the right thing there, but I don't think he's in general like a good substitute parent overall. Like,
does he try? I don't remember him trying to be.
I don't think he does because he's her handler. Like
it's like a protection on her part, right?
Yeah, he is using her for what he's using her to gain access to nerve. He is taking care of her to the extent that it keeps her operational as a soldier and useful to Nerve, and makes him useful to Nerve by being indispensable to her. Like that's his relationship here. Is very instrumental. He's not completely sociopathic about it, but he's not being like a real parent to her in the way that she really needs. Like he's not really trying to raise her to be a complete human. And to be honest, he does a better job parenting Shinji.
Oh, well, I mean, what's our comparison? Who is there?
There's the sensei who is completely off screen and doesn't get a name. And then there's Gendo and Misato. Like by giving him like one guidance counselor ass speech about watermelons, he has outparented all of them.
There you go. The bar is that low, and I guess you only realize that. You only realize that as an adult, I think, because even though I say you only realize that as an adult, but you still see people talk about Shinji and the characters in this way.
Yeah.
Where they're like, Shinji's like, oh, why is Shinji so sad all the time? He gets to live with a hot girl and gets to pilot a giant robot, and his dad lets him do all that. And I'm like,
My show about how tragic it is to be a child soldier is answering the questions that people are having about how cool is it to pilot a giant robot. Like, yeah, it's. I mean, some of this is. I do wonder sometimes about, like, is there some deeper, more profound limits to our ability to create fantasy? That, like, can we really create like, this is the old question of, like, is there such a thing as an anti-war movie? Right, I forget who said that. It's an old critique. Like, there's no such thing as an anti-war movie, because by shooting a war movie, you make it look cool. And, like, in spite of everything else that happens in Evangelion, the robots look cool. They all get to be big goddamn heroes.
It's true.
It's exciting, it's sexy, it's cool. And, like, I don't think the show is really meant to be speculation about how sad it would be to have giant robots. Like, I don't think that's...
Okay, you know what? That sounds like a really cool concept, though.
I mean, honestly,
how sad it would be that there are giant robots.
To some extent, that's been, like, Gundam's entire project, right?
Oh, yeah. I was like, I fucking forgot about Gundam, of course.
Forgot about Gundam. Forgot about, like, 50 seasons of Gundam.
But people still miss the point.
Yeah, people still want it to be about cool. And I mean, I think about a scene from one of the Gundam series I did not watch, because I've only watched about one half of Gundam Wing and not any other Gundam. I've watched a couple episodes of G Gundam, because G Gundam's amazing.
G Gundam is the one where, G Gundam is the one where giant robots are cool. We should have all of them fight. We should have Olympics.
We should have a giant robot Olympics. It's so cool. But, you know, there's a scene from one of the Gundams, one of the earlier Gundams that, one of the series I didn't watch, where they're fighting in a city, and one of the shell ejecta from, I think, one of the good guys, like, just a shell ejecta, crushes a woman's head, you know, and kills her in the street. And she's carrying a child, and another person just comes up and picks up the kid and leaves behind the corpse. And it's like, that is the sadness of having cool giant robot war, is like, is the same sadness as any industrial war, which is the casualness and ease with which it shreds the civilian population around it, the casualness of that collateral damage.
I see, I just read the comment. You can see how all this would make one want to buy more breadsticks for pizza hut.
And it's, well, and actually, Rory Roo, I would kind of say that, like, that's why I like the TV ending of Evangelion, is that the TV ending of Evangelion is group therapy. It's like the healing potential of group therapy. And the I am I forget where we kind of just almost intuitively and readily start doing this, and we can go really old with this. We can go really, really, really old with this, and people making temples to Achilles and Ajax. You know, venerating Achilles and Ajax as demigods from cool war story about how cool war is, the fucking Iliad.
That's a story that ends well for everybody.
Yeah, the cool story that ends well for everyone, the Iliad. Which I did read some classicists pointing out that the modern interpretation that it's a straightforward anti-war story is probably incorrect. It is probably more of a ambiguous story about war. It's from a society where war is endemic, and yes, sir, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, look, if they wanted people to stop misreading it, maybe Homer should have stopped releasing Moe merchandise of Patroclus. Obviously, it was his problem for releasing, like, Achilles' war card as a fucking plastic scale model.
Oh my god, could you imagine? That might be the... Oh my god, I'm amazed I haven't seen somebody make a commercial for that, like a Achilles dragging the body behind his chariot as a toy, as like a children's toy.
They combined. The bodies combined into a bigger chariot. I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? I mean, like, it's impossible to make an anti-war movie, but at the same time, is that like a limitation of art or a limitation of the culture in which audiences think about art?
Yeah. I'm wondering how much is contingent and how much is inherent. Like, I have never talked to somebody who came away and said, "Damn, that looks so cool," about Come and See.
Come and See? Oh, the movie.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Come and See, Lux, it's. I
have to see it.
You gotta see it.
What Videodrome?
Videodrome rocks. Videodrome rocks. Videodrome rocks.
Limitation of media analysis and literacy. Okay.
I guess, but I feel like if it's something that's been going on for like 3,000 years, like we can't just be blaming external forces as creatives. We can't just be looking outside of ourselves and saying this is the audience's fault. We need to be looking like, well, where are we not meeting the audience where they're at?
I mean, clearly they should just make war stop being so cool to fight. Obviously.
I am of I think this is just something, and again, I was thinking more about in the context of fantasy, that like I think that if we had a similar story as Evangelion that didn't involve such cool looking robots, that was much closer to 20th or 21st century warfare, it wouldn't be as marketable.
The weird thing is, you know, I actually just read this while doing that, looking that stuff up. The weird thing is that the Eva toys did not sell until well after the anime had started airing.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Everybody was like, wow, these robots are kind of fucked up looking.
I mean, they are.
and then they started selling because it's like, oh, cool robot.
Yeah. They made it cool. And I mean, this is going like I'm actually gonna go back to your. I'm gonna go back a couple of steps here, back to a bit of our tree diagram, which is. I think this is part of the reason why I found that tree thing so compelling. And again, this is me and Mix were talking about this, and me and him just fundamentally disagree on a couple of artistic points. We've talked about this before. I've known Mix for a while. The kind of I think that in order to create these, people cannot live off of completely empty calorie fiction.
Of course.
That, like, we're talking about Evangelion because Evangelion has this incredible pop culture impact, but we're talking about some real serious elements under here about what is growing up and how does this show intervene in this question of growing up and relations between people of different ages and relationships between violence and self-esteem and kindness and love and all this stuff. And that stuff is a deeper narrative layer.
Yes.
And that needs to exist in order for the tree to be fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of why I found this going all the way back here. That's part of why I found this tree metaphor so compelling, is that I don't, in general, think that you can actually create all that much art that is shallow, empty calorie bullshit.
Right.
You can create bad art. You can create art that communicates your deeper layers inefficiently. But I think that even people who say that it's not that deep do in fact actually consume deeper stuff. I think they are doing a dishonest disavowal of their desires.
Or I guess they're not consciously consuming.
Yeah. I mean, I think
whatever underlying totality they want to believe.
Well, I think that ultimately what has happened is that their language for understanding how to talk about deep art, it comes from listening to people like me and you, and they've decided that me and you are fucking annoying. That reading Jameson is fucking annoying, and therefore the problem is not that we have an annoying language or annoying aesthetics, but that the actual concept we're talking about is uninteresting to them. When the actual concept is interesting to them, they just don't like the presentation that we've done of it.
Right.
Which is an Oz problem. But maybe I'm just like, I guess I'm just like really optimistic about the possibilities of art and pop culture in the 21st century. But
I mean, I think the person like Azuma does point out that it's not as though the desire for a deep and meaningful narrative has fully gone away. There is that tension still. The desire for rich, small narratives that you think, right? But even these things, right? Even these things get twisted and reduced into a sad ending. Story about coming of age.
Well, and
themes, you know, this theme, right?
Well, to some extent, those are, you know, going back again. We're going back to older stuff. To some extent, these are deep things. They're just, you can make them seem shallow,
right?
But like, when you're an artistic creator, you are thinking about these things. If you talk to people who are into drawing, they are talking about things in terms of color choice and warmth and line efficiency and stuff like that. They're not talking about like, does this further a grand narrative?
Of course.
And so, and this is a very funny chart to me. Part of why this chart's so fucking funny to me is that looking for fluff, humor, happy ending, these are kind of the most fundamental questions you can be asking about a story. And then meanwhile, this is like living side by side with alternate universe canon divergence,
right?
Which is not a deep question. Like that's a very shallow thing. Or anal sex, you know, that's just, does it happen in the story or not? Right? That's not a question of like slow burn, which is a question about what is the pacing of the story. Or mutual pining, which is, you know, telling you, is this a story about unrequited love or not? Which is like a pretty freaking deep question about the narratives you're consuming. That's part of why I find this tagging so fucking funny, is that some of these tags I think are things that to me are very informative and useful analytically, and then some of these are just like very shallow and meaningless.
That's the thing, they exist in the grand database. The grand narrative, they might as well be equivalent.
And I do wonder how many people like they're equivalent on the page, but are they equivalent in people's minds?
I mean, look, we have at least one example where somebody just refuses to engage with something because it doesn't, the narration go I. So
yeah, I sometimes am wondering if that's bait, because that's just insane. Like,
it sounds like bait, but at the same time, it's like I can't help but wonder if there are maybe people who really do think that way.
I wonder too. I am going to make a brief aside to say, for Gringotts' sake, instead of giant robots, it's the kids are needed in regular looking military drones. An anime that I love is called 8680. Yes, 8686. 8686 rules, and 8686 is not cool. It's extremely good, but it does not make the war it is portraying look cool at all. It makes it wrenching.
Let me look up, is there merchandise of the robots? I feel like, yeah,
I mean, there's gotta be. And much more distressing, there's almost certainly like sex dolls of the characters, of you know, the woman who had slurs carved into her body by men who raped her. Like, it's like, what a grim show. Incredible writing, very much about how a liberal society can become a genocidal society and act like it's the same thing.
I did think it was like definitely, you know, it was the one show that was willing to question whether sort of the prevailing, you know, whether prevailing liberal politics might in some way be hypocritical.
I think that I think some other shows have done it, but I don't think they've done it so harshly.
Or so like, I mean,
pointedly.
I agree.
Yeah, like it's
like, they say this is hypocrisy, one character says to the other character.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
Nothing like that, and it's. I mean, I don't know. This is just me gushing about 8686. I'm never going to get over my love of how 8686 showcases that.
86. Is it 80? Is it 8686? Or is it
that's
just
how 86? I always pronounced it. It was 8686. That the the society has had a question of, do we want to win this war or commit a genocide? Is racism more important than our survival? And they said yes, racism is more important than our survival. Which is...
I mean, their answer was, if I recall, what if we solved the war with racism?
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea. And then, like, that's the narrative of the second most important character, is her realizing it's not gonna fucking work. Like, we have a choice between winning and racism, and I'm going to try to win. And yeah, and that makes her very unpopular. And then they lose the war. Like, it's, God, what a wrenching show. What an incredible show. And the part where they're talking about like liberty and equality while they're perpetuating a genocide. Incredible. But yeah, where was I going with this? Other than gushing about a show that I really like, it's yeah, I guess I'm kind of more optimistic than I'm certainly more optimistic than Mix. I think I'm more optimistic than you about our audiences and how they interact with these things. I do think that there is a certain degree of illiteracy in this culture, and I am trying to fight it by running movie nights where I show stuff like Videodrome. And I think that a lot of it is a fetishization of anti-intellectualism. I think there's a fetishization of anti-intellectualism in our broader pop cultural context that, and I will say I do not think that Lyotard and Jameson are doing us a lot of favors here by writing in kind of impenetrable ways. I think that there's something to be said. I hope that we've done this today. I hope that today we have made these theories a little bit more accessible to my audience, to make them think a little bit, to find it a little bit easier to see how to look at a piece of art and see not just like twin tails, but see like...
We say in front of the chart that we're rimming is on top of a happy ending, which is on top of emotional hurt comfort.
This is such a funny chart. This is so funny. It's so good.
It's so good. I'm glad I picked it. I was like, it has the words anal sex on here.
That's
Maybe
fine.
I shouldn't have this in my academic presentation.
Nope. It's fine. I think this chart's amazing. But I do think that I do also think that there's a little bit of a disconnect that we as people who are more critical need to be aware of, that the people who are creating art are not generally thinking in terms of how do I mean, from Jameson's perspective, how do I engage in furthering the cause of revolutionary socialism? How does my drawing of a sexy lady further the cause of revolutionary socialism? It's not really how people tend to think that much about art. They spend much more of their energy on like the craftsmanship and whether or not it's interesting.
More so, I feel like this tendency, right? This tendency towards the idea of a totalizing worldview is almost unconscious, right? You're not deliberately trying to say, I don't think that Kincaid, right? I don't think Kincaid is making his art thinking, with this warm springtime scene, soon the American public will be more receptive towards fascism. I don't think he's thinking about these ideas consciously, but it's certainly like his influences have a history. Go back to that tree, have a history, which go back. You might not even be conscious of the grand narrative. And I think Lyotard mentions that rarely is the grand narrative complete, but it's more so the promise of one, the idea of one that, people kind of knowingly or not gravitate toward.
That's a good point. It is definitely unconscious. I mean, that was part of why I kind of had that little aside about like modernist versus pre-modern. Like in the pre-modern world, it is generally just very. It is actually totalizing in the sense that you do not see the outside.
Right.
You just don't see the outside. And in the modern world, you do see the outside of it. You are looking at how do I create this meta narrative that makes sense of the entire world around me and wins competitions with other meta narratives.
Right.
And again, the postmodern condition is the acceptance that you're not going to successfully do that. That like you're not going to manage to pull it off. That you are only ever going to create to some extent you might only be able to create a micro narrative, might be a way to put it. Like you're limited in your narrative capabilities here.
Of course, right. A fragment, which in turn,
I do think that us in this otaku world, we're kind of always engaged in that. We're kind of always going to be engaged in that. And I don't think it's something that we have to accept as a defeat, because I do.
It is, right?
It is. And to some extent, I don't actually really know that we are lacking that meta narrative for our society. I do think we do have a certain meta narrative that is very common, which it's very easy when you look at prestige television, which is supposed to be the undermining of this entire concept. But I think prestige television, your Mad Men's and your Games of Thrones, that human life is made of people, that our wins and losses are done by how we interact with those around us. And that victory isn't when you usher in a grand new world project that saves all people. It's when you create a good life for yourself and those around you. Admittedly, I'm saying this because I like Epicureanism as a philosophical outlook, but and also that's kind of my project as a VTuber, is I tried to create that, but
they're the cause of revolutionary Epicureanism.
Yeah, it's I do think we do kind of have this meta narrative that like these big things we can't we don't have good agency over. We do have agency over how we treat the people around us, and I do think that's a common meta narrative. It's just the meta narratives that Marxist scholars were prepared to manage were the meta narratives of like fascist states and Marxist-Leninist states, not like how do you keep your family alive in a disaster? How do you keep your family alive in poverty? That's my thoughts. I think I was leaning towards wrapping up pretty soon.
Yeah, no, that's we can wrap up. I have said my piece. We have yapped about a lot of more robust than I was expecting. Now I'm like regretting that I didn't like have that one meme where Tomino puts his whole heart into writing an anti-war narrative, but then people missing and say, "Oh, cool."